flea experiment.
Sure.
How about the other people who've been held down also by the same condition for long? Why are they not? Here is my problem.
Mm-hmm.
I have a lot of mentees,
yeah.
African-American students whom I used to take to Africa. I had a program. Every year, I take a bunch of them to build schools in Benin.
A lot of that money out of his own pocket, by the way.
Yes.
Credit where credit is due.
Now, I really get the goose on my skin when we keep repeating the very thing that is building prisons around us. One is that we've been psyched up, so we can't do anything. Two is somebody is always lurching in the dark. That's why we are the way we are. If you say so, and then you ask a kid to go to school and stay in school and do well, you sound stupid. Why don't you go and kill the white supremacist so the problem will go away from me? There is something that is just human. When you find yourself in a certain situation, you cannot explain it, better create a boogeyman fast. But a boogeyman only turns around and imprisons you and your own children. I refuse. There is no psychological effect on any black person on earth. We are just what we are, different. And whenever we find ourselves among other people, the first thing we start doing is compare. Let me give you a country, South Africa. 12 tribes, 7 major ones. Shaka the Zulu is from the Zulu land. And then the Xhosas, and then the Vendas and Limpopos, okay? Makes one huge region, 51 million black people. Six-pack and big chest. They'll kill you with their bare hands. 2.8 million white people arrived and built that country to the standard of a European country. I'm no expert on all the things he has listed. I might have read about them, but you see, every time I read something or I encounter a story, my mind works in that way because I'm an critical thinker. All right. I have also known societies in the world that once upon a time were prevented to do anything. They were prevented to do anything. Like the Jews is an example of it. Indians were an example for 81 years by the British. They couldn't build, innovate, do anything. They have to rely on the white people, right? And you can go down. Koreans the same way. However, I believe in something called the second advantage, meaning when the phenomena is over, you should repeat it. So somebody gave me the first lecture about Tulsa, Oklahoma. And I said, what year was that? Quite a long time ago, right? Okay. At one time in this country, you and we will not have an opportunity to do certain things. But if that ability to build Black Wall Street is innate, why haven't we repeated it?
Because we cannot.
Slavery, but we built something. Clearly, Black Americans have built throughout slavery and the culture that we have currently.
What I'm asking is, give me an example so I'll be able to respond to that particular thing.
Well, like things like gospel is something that we built after slavery.
Songs and music,
the foods that we eat, that we consume.
Sure, songs and music exist in every society.
Is that not a part of culture?
No.
About the mind screw, out of respect for your channel, that we have been put under. So no, we don't have an official language because we weren't allowed to have one. But still, if you look at AAVE, it's everywhere. And when it comes out of our mouth, it goes from the hood to the boardrooms to a billboard on Broadway or in Times Square. So we have culture, we have influence. And no, I'm not just talking about taking what's the word I'm looking for? Weeds and turning them into collard greens, or taking innards and turning them into chitterlings. I'm talking about the fact that we have persevered and we are the most copied individuals on the planet. So much so, if I'm wrong, please explain Akon to me. Please explain Burna Boy to me. They all do a variation of who we are. And I'm not just talking about music. I'm talking about the walk. I'm talking about the talk. I'm talking about the hairstyles. I'm talking about the innovation. Everything we do. We took a construction worker's boot and made it the hottest item for the past 40 years. Because everybody finds a way to profit off of what we create and then demonize us for creating it and then label us criminals, uneducated, unwilling. We don't care, but they don't talk about all the systemic things that have been set up and profited by people who want to keep us in a certain box. That doesn't mean we can't escape that box, but to act like we were not put under duress for what we had to put together as a culture when everybody else got to inherit it. And that includes Haitians, Jamaicans, everybody else got to be left alone so that they could develop. We didn't have that.
Well, everybody. Hi, welcome to the Keisha King Show. I'm your host, Keisha King Benton, and we've got quite a show for you guys tonight. Thank you all for joining. Hi, Megan. Hi, Katie. Hi, DT. Thank you guys for being here and getting the chat popping already. Demaria reacts. Hello. Karen. Hi. Is that a man bun? You know what it might be. It might be. So we have a treat in store for us tonight. So we're not going to have to wait until the end of this show for our good friend Chuck. He is here already. We've been cooking up some stuff. So let me just set this up for everybody before we dive on in. So, oh yes, Demaria says the good Reverend Doctor. Hello. Yes. Let me just clarify. So I've gotten phone calls. Okay, it is a joke. People are like, "You got your Reverend Doctor." It's a joke. Okay. But it is funny. And the fact that I'm getting calls about it means I must be hitting on something. Hey, Khalil. Let's see. Okay, yes, Khalil. All right. So our last debate, our last show, Chuck came on and he was talking about forgiveness. And it really hit me how impactful of a statement that he was making, and something that he was talking about something that we just don't talk about. But if we really get all the way to the bottom, of the matter when it comes to Black Christians, quote unquote Black Christians, and this thing that makes Black Christians, outside of the ideology, we know the ideology is wrong, but the ideology persists because because Black Christians don't truly have a grasp of the true gospel. And one of the things that they are missing from the true gospel is the concept of repentance and forgiveness. The very core of the gospel, they totally miss with their Marxist, Black liberation, Black power ideologies. And so I wanted to read this scripture before I bring my friend Chuck up. It's pretty quick, but I wanted to share this with you all. Just to kind of wet the palate and see and kind of get a gist of where we're going here, because we're going to talk about I'm reading comments. We're going to continue to talk about what this man Frank Zanu is what he's bringing to the forefront that so many Black Americans do not want to acknowledge. So let me just read this scripture to you really quick. It says, so this is Luke. Yes, Luke 24, verse 44. We're going to start. So it says, so this is Jesus. He has been killed. He has risen from the dead, and now he is before the disciples. He has come and showing himself to the apostles. And he says, the Bible says, then he said to them, these are my words that I spoke to you while I was still with you, that everything written about me in the law of Moses and the prophets and the Psalms must be fulfilled. Then he opened their minds to understand the scriptures and said to them, thus it is written that the Christ should suffer and on the third day rise from the dead, and that repentance for the forgiveness of sins should be proclaimed in his name to all nations, beginning from Jerusalem. Now, what does that even, what is that? What Jesus is telling them, he's giving you the blueprint. It's really, this is like the blueprint of salvation. His death and resurrection is the mechanism, I guess, in which this transaction of repentance and forgiveness comes into the earth on through one group, the Jews, because of Jesus. Jesus was a Jew. Where he came from, beginning with them, that's going to go out into the entire world. It doesn't matter what color you are. It does not matter where you come from. It doesn't matter what culture you came from. And this is, as you can see where I'm going with the Frank Zanu thing. He brings some great questions up, but I don't believe that he's a Christian, so he can't fully round this thing out. And so we're going to help with that. And we're going to talk about forgiveness and how important that is to our very faith as being Christians, and why so many Black Americans can't seem to grasp this unique concept. So I'm going to be quiet and I'm going to bring up my friend Chuck, who has helped us to really think about this thing. And I know for me, this has really impacted me, and I hope you guys would do the same. What's up, friend?
What's up? What's up?
Oh, sounds good. We hear you loud and clear.
Coming through loud clear. All right, cool, cool. Yeah, let's get into this.
Yeah.
Great opening. Yeah, great opening clip. Frank Zander. I don't know much about him. I've seen, some of these viral moments. The guy that he was having a conversation with, I forget his name. He's a fairly popular figure on social media.
Dave Anderson is his
David
name.
Adams. Oddly enough, I believe he considers himself to be a conservative. Oddly enough.
Well, he says he's a Christian. I know that. So, and
Yeah.
that's why I found this clip to be, or this conversation to be so interesting, because he say he a Christian, but of course he don't
Yeah.
sound like one.
No, he doesn't sound like one. He doesn't, and he surely doesn't sound like a political or social or philosophical conservative either.
Mhm.
But yeah, that was a very interesting clip. That and this guy, he sort of moves in and around that. I guess the popular crowd of
The hip
black
hop,
conservatives, yeah, kind of like the new, this I guess this growth in quote unquote black conservatism over the past couple of years. So it's very, very. I'm like I said, I'm not all that familiar with his ideas. I haven't really listened to him much, but yeah, that was a rather interesting exchange between the two
yeah.
of them. I will
Mhm.
say, I will say, but
Yeah. Well,
yeah,
what did you well, I have more. I have more
yeah.
for you. So I'm gonna go ahead and play some more of this. And I want to get your thoughts
Okay.
on this conversation, because it's really good. I wish we could go through more of it because there's so many good things in there, but
Hmm.
we'll do what we can do.
And to
Okay.
this day, I have yet to meet one African, one Jamaican, one Caribbean, one Black person anywhere who comes into this country and has automatically ingrained in them before they start going, "My country, 'tis of thee, sweet land of liberty, of thee I sing," that they're afraid when the red and blue lights come on behind them when they're pulled over. And I get it. And I'm the son, brother, and nephew of cops. That's why I say, yes, we have a culture, but of course we don't have a language. But let's not be disingenuous and act like it doesn't matter, because it does. Because as foundational Black American goes, so goes everybody else in society. Came from pictures that they used to take the back of and mail for people who couldn't see the lynching that they had. All of these things we survived. And the funny thing is, everyone's coming over here and benefiting from the fact that we put out the 13th, 14th, and 15th Amendment. All of those things that started as the Black liberation movement, but then got shoehorned into civil rights because everybody wants to come off of our pain. It's still a part of who we are. American culture is Black culture. The problem is, not only did we have to create it, but everybody else got to monetize it. We don't own major forms of media. So the message that goes out to the world about foundational Black Americans is very lopsided. It's very negative. Even Frank said to Nancy, he said, well, what is your culture? Twerking? Negating the fact that twerking started in Africa.
Of
Mating
course,
rituals, things of that nature, tying of the hips, stop me when I go wrong. All of Okay, but see, okay, my question is, Africa is big. Okay, and full transparency, which I am just now realizing. So I have been on a panel with Dave Anderson. I didn't even realize it until Megan's no, who said it? Yeah, Megan said, mentioned the Black conservative perspective. And then I was like, wait a minute, Dave Anderson. I was on a panel with him with a righteous perspective. I don't know. This is old, and maybe his thoughts have evolved. So, but I don't know what his thoughts are fully. But I just found this conversation interesting to say the least.
Yeah.
But he's bigging up Africa so much, and then at the very next breath says, you know, all of this twerking and all that. But yeah, that came from Africa. It's like this double mindedness.
Yeah.
Twerking's not good, even if it did come from Africa. Like, so what?
Yeah,
I don't
exactly.
understand. Like,
Exactly.
that's
Yeah.
not a
Right.
flex.
Right. Of course it's not. Of course it's not. And that was the first thing that came to my mind. I said, well, brother, you're not in Africa. You're not in Africa. Uh, I just don't understand. I mean, what you have to pick and choose, okay, what's best for you. You have to decide the kind of person that you want to be. You live here in the United States, right? And all of the great, wonderful things that, our English speaking brethren have bestowed upon us, this great European culture, this great English culture, this great English civilization. And I understand, I get how assimilation can be a bit of a burdensome task, but you have to deal with reality for what it is. Okay. You either assimilate into the wider culture, or you find a place of residency that suits you. If you prefer Africa, where people are twerking or whatever you claim is going on there, I don't know what particular country you're talking about, but listen, bro, you're free to go. But like you said, to simply mention the fact that, well, twerking came from Africa, as if that automatically bestows or bequeaths some sort of inherent goodness upon it, when we know that there are all sorts of horrible things that come from Africa, and there are all sorts of horrible things that originate in all various parts of the world, that's Europe included. But again, that just because it comes from Africa doesn't make it right. And just rattling off things, just this whole stream, I couldn't even keep up. The rhetoric was coming so fast and furious, talking about how we survived lynchings. Where a lot of people survived lynchings, right? Because blacks weren't the only people that were lynched. That was just a common form of mob justice. Oftentimes, more often than not, as a matter of fact, people who were victims of lynchings were individuals who had been accused of having committed some heinous crime. And oftentimes, you saw this kind of mob justice, these lynchings occur in parts of the American frontier. Okay, and parts of the South, particularly after the Civil War, was considered frontier land. Okay, and this
What
was
does
a
that
common
mean? What does that mean? Like frontier? I know that
frontier
sounds kind
land.
of
Yeah,
crazy, but
no,
like,
no, no. That's a good question. That's a good question. It's a place where institutions are weak. Particularly law and law enforcement. Right. It's sort of like law of the jungle. Almost.
hmm.
It's sort of like a kind of like a quasi savage sort of living. And when I say savage, I mean savage in a more, I guess, French context, because the word savage, the way we use it in English, it derives from a French word that's pronounced, I think it's pronounced something like sauvage or something like that. But
Hmm.
its original meaning is a person who exists outside of, someone who doesn't live a sedentary lifestyle, someone who lives beyond the fringes of settlement. And, and out in that area in the American South during Reconstruction and out west until probably as late as the 1890s, you didn't have strong legal systems and prisons and jails and judges and sheriffs that could do things. Oftentimes, the sheriff had the authority in various towns throughout the American frontier to enlist these various posses that would, at the command of the sheriff, police the town. And so this, lynchings didn't just happen to black people, but this is a natural occurrence when a society is developing, and you have this class of civilizations, this class of French and English civilization
Hmm.
that is competing with Native American sensibilities and other well, primarily Native American sensibilities. Kind of like dividing up the newly formed United States with the Indian territories west of the Mississippi, and so you had that buffer land there where there was a lot of lawlessness. You had raids coming in from natives, the raids coming in, from the west. And so this was typical. Frank Zanu mentioned Tulsa, Oklahoma, just as point of fact, very as if I may mention briefly that part of what a huge reason why the Tulsa race riot, not massacre, but a huge part of the reason why the Tulsa race riot occurred was because a white I'm sorry, I forgot, I can't recall if it was the blacks or the whites showed up initially. I believe the whites showed up initially, and the white sheriff in charge at the time was able to subdue the anger and the fervor of the white mob in order to protect the accused. And before he could, send them on their way, it was the black counterinsurgency that provoked the racial conflict that would occur. And so what I'm saying in so many words is that the blacks went on to attack the whites. But the reason why the whites showed up was in an attempt to perhaps exact revenge for the lynching of a white man that had occurred just a few months prior to the arrest of I forget his name, but
Uh-oh. No. Is it just me, or did everything just freeze? Are you
did I
guys?
lose my thing?
Oh, okay, I can hear you. There you go. You're back. I do want to say, so Camille on Instagram, she says he was saying that twerking didn't come from Black Americans. He wasn't bigging up Africa. Uh-oh. Let's see. I'll remove him for a sec. Man. So what are you guys thinking listening to this this conversation? Okay, there we go.
I'm good. I'm sorry,
All right.
Keisha. Yeah, I'm good now. I'm good now. But yeah, but to finish off my point is that there was a white man who was lynched months prior. And so tensions were already, on tense. People were already tense because a white man named Roy Belton had been lynched just a few months prior. And so and like I said, the gentleman who was accused, the infamous Diamond Dick, who was accused of sexually assaulting a white woman, and I've researched the Tulsa incident. I've looked into it, and there's no way to be 100% sure because the matter was never adjudicated. But when you look into the story and you actually research what took place, there's a high probability that he did in fact do what he was accused of having done. And this was commonplace, anytime, and oftentimes when someone was lynched, they say it doesn't make it right. I do believe in, due process and in a trial before a jury and judge and so on.
Yeah.
But it adds a bit more context. It adds a bit more understanding and layers to the discussion and to the conversation. It wasn't just racially motivated terrorism. That's not what lynchings were.
Well, it makes it very easy to blame people when you just, set it up like that, and you have your your default reason for everything is, racism and slavery. You will never accomplish anything. But here, let's listen to some more of his wisdom.
these things get put out as if that's who we are. And it's a very limited, very narrow-minded, very sore and very disingenuous snapshot of who we are, because we get put into killers, baby mamas, this and that and the other. And then when you look at how the media is weaponized, right? They'll take people throughout the diaspora and then put them on platforms and then bring them here. I'll give you an example. There's a show on CBS called Bob Hart's Abishola. And she said things that were much more incendiary than what Frank said. You know, oh, what is it? Gangbangers and baby mamas?
Crazy.
No. That energy is designed to keep us a certain way. And then when you talk about how the entertainment is weaponized, because that's the message, that's our largest export. It always has been. Our talent and our ability to entertain, but not capitalize on said entertainment. You can't point to one major Black-owned record company. You can't point to one major Black-owned media outlet. You can't point to one major media or technological distribution center that is controlled, owned, and managed by foundational Black Americans. And so the message of foundational Black Americans that gets out is not our message. And I completely reject that. If that's what you think the culture is, I am here to tell you that ain't my culture. It ain't never been my culture. It ain't been the culture of most of my brethren. Do we have some knuckleheads? Absolutely. Of course we do. But do we also have things like COINTELPRO we've still had to overcome? Do we have things like the 94 Biden-Clinton crime bill that we've had to overcome? And throughout history, I have yet to see anybody from any of those 54 countries come back for their brothers that they say that they love so much. I don't remember the warships coming to get us. I don't. But what I do see is, oh, well, we're really good at educating. We take the opportunities and we're able to, you know, go and take these American opportunities that you guys squander. Yeah, because you get an immigrant experience. You do not get the foundational Black American experience. You get the same immigrant talk that the Russians get, and the Russians got a lot of nerve because if it wasn't for Alexander Pushkin, they'd still be speaking French.
I don't understand this argument, because it's like, but they're Black. And so everybody tells us that just by you being in a Black body, remember, that's what we got, Black bodies, the Black bodies, black bodies all the time. These Black and brown immigrants, they have Black bodies. I thought that was the determiner of what your experience in America would be like. What happened to that? Oh, no. See, it didn't happen for you because you got another kind of experience. You got the immigrant talk. You got taught by the Russians. It's still America, though. Isn't America still the racist country? Is it still the thing that you said it was? So how come these particular people aren't having the same experience, even though they're in a Black or brown body? Make it make sense. The math ain't mathing. Like the bodies ain't bodying. Like, come on, the race ain't racing. Come on. What are we talking about? Okay.
It's just, no, Keisha, you're right. You're absolutely right. I'm just having a bit of a connection issues, but I heard most of what you said. It's just baseless American campus rhetoric, and that's all this is. Just throwing out useless things so that people who are insecure, and by people in this case, in this instance, I mean most Blacks, who clamor, who glob on to any useless, trivial fact that they think can grant them some kind of unearned sense of value and worth for the purpose of his own vanity, his own attempt at stewardship. For example, what was the point of him bringing up the fact that this alleged Alexander Pushkin, I'm familiar with him, he's supposedly the Black man who invented the Russian language. Why does it matter if a Black man invented the Russian language? And why does it matter that if it wasn't for a Black man, the Russians would still be speaking French? What does that have to do with anything?
I didn't understand the point. No, well, I guess I'm trying to say that, see, we're the
yeah,
Black.
I know. Right, yeah. I'm sorry, Keisha. I didn't mean to cut you off. All the great things we do, and everyone just takes and takes and takes and steals. And of course, he says that. Well, this, we don't own these record labels. These aren't our messages. This isn't our. Yes, it is. Yes, it is. It absolutely is. You know what I mean? I've lived it the same way that I'm presuming or assuming that he lived it. It kind of reminds me of the guy Jay West you was having a conversation with the other day. You know what I mean? It's like, bro, like I call cap. Like, stop. You're lying, right? You're simply, making things up, in an attempt to appease someone's negative emotions. But there's nothing scientific or studious or scholarly about any of the things that you're saying. Why is it? Is it because for me personally, okay, I don't care to be in the music industry. I don't care to be in the music industry. I don't want to be a record exec. I don't want to own my own media distribution or anything of the sort. And so I'm not interested. That's not my problem. That's not my lane. If you have a question as to why there are no black, I don't know, record labels, although there are many, but he says that, well, it's not us that's putting this, we're not putting out these messages. It's not our culture, because they're, of course, dangling the carrot. And then some ignorant buffoon who is the minority within the black community is willing to step up and play the role, because there are people in positions of power, and kind of like there's this tinge, you see what I'm saying, Keisha, because we all know who runs the music industry, don't we? We all know who runs the film industry, don't we? Okay, we'll just leave that there. But it's not us, you see.
You're a smart one, because if you listen more,
Yeah, I know exactly where he's going. You see, I've never watched this interview. You see what I'm saying? But
that tinge is
it's always there.
always there with the people who have a certain way of thinking and looking at the world. It's so interesting. It's so
But
fascinating.
the last point, Keisha, he doesn't even realize how he sounds, because while he's claiming that, black folks, we've always been able to entertain, and we've always done this and we've always done that, and we have our abilities, our skills, and our talents, commoditized at our expense. Essentially, we're being exploited, right? And this has been going on for I don't know how long, but a lot of these institutions that are centered around private property and property rights, these institutions have been, prior to the discovery of the New World, these things were going on the other side of the Atlantic. And so we've been intermingling with European culture and getting involved and learning the lay of the land when it comes to various markets and so on over the years. But yet and still, somehow we don't know how to arrive at the marketplace and bargain in a way that is beneficial to ourselves as individuals. But he claims as though we're so mighty and we're so powerful and we're capable of doing so many things, but yet we are simultaneously pulling up the rear because we are too dumb, we're too stupid, we're too gullible and too naive to properly maximize our and reap the benefits of our own human capital. So how can we simultaneously, Keisha, answer this for me, how can we be so great but yet so stupid, gullible, and naive at the same time, so as to continue to get taken advantage from by people who are a lot more, I guess, skillful and deceitful and act with more guile than I suppose we are? Maybe that just speaks to our moral superiority, because we're not willing to cheat and steal and rob and kill like everyone else. Or are we just stupid?
Frank said something really interesting. He said that the problem that a lot of Africans see when they come over here, before they come, they love Black Americans. They think that Black Americans are so successful and this and that, and they hear all these great things. But then when they come and put their eyeballs on Black Americans themselves and they're living amongst them, what Frank said is that the reason why it turns from honor and looking at them in a positive light and to a negative light is because that they see so much of what's going on back in Africa in America with Black Americans, in the violence and the fighting and the like what you were saying, the jealousy and the just the violence, the jealousy, the bling, the bling, But here's the thing: you said, why aren't Black Americans rebuilding? Why aren't they doing this? And two things come to mind. Number one, the scripture of the talents. God gives everybody a measure of talent. Now, if you spend your life comparing yourself to, if God gave you the one talent, but he gave your fellow other nation members, your fellow citizens, fellow American citizens, let's just say the white ones. I know there are others that do far better than the white ones, but let's just keep it to them. Let's say he gave them 5, and let's say he gave the Asians 10. If you spend your life comparing your 1 to the 5 and the 10, you're not doing what you're supposed to be doing with the one that you got. And I think that and let me just finish this with Frank. The thing that he identifies that problem: you're not being used for the purpose. You're not using the talents and gifts that you were given. You're comparing yourself to these other people when where you come from is just not like that. I think you've said it before. In Europe, it's cold. They had to innovate to survive. So that innovation thing is in them. In Africa, you reach your hand outside the window and the apple is right there. You can go outside and lay it up under the banana tree. I don't know, making it up, all year round. There's the environment is, you don't have to fight to survive. But let me just finish. Let me just put a point on this. And when you have, on one end, you're comparing, you're not competing. So that's one thing. And then you ignore the gifts and talents that you do have, and instead of you embracing them and seeing how that can benefit the rest of society, you spend your time whining and complaining and begging these other people to have the same gift and talents that they have, that you wouldn't know what to do with them. One thing that Frank says I think is so powerful is that if you can do all this stuff, how come you haven't done it again? We're going to see that clip. And they can't answer the question. Of course, it's all the traditional answers. Oh, racism, slavery, the white, it's all the things. But the fact of the matter is, nobody Black from the continent has done it. Why? That's something that you have to ask yourself. Why? But none of these people have actually taken on true Christian faith like many of the Europeans did. That's one thing that makes them different. They actually read the Bible and they believed it. They believed it, and they worked, and their lives reflected it. And that's a big, huge reason of how the West was built. And so if you don't, I'm bringing this all back to forgiveness. At one time, even with all that, Black Americans were learning from their white counterparts, their white fellow citizens, and doing the things that they did and were becoming successful until they changed their beliefs. And they went from that forgiveness, sort of the Booker T. Washington way, until the grievance, the W.E.B. Du Bois way. And when you're focused on grievance and not forgiveness and moving on and doing better, this is what you get.
And this is how, of course, I'll be remiss, if I didn't mention around about the mid 20th century, in the nationalist or nationalism movement that swept across the third world. This is what allowed the Soviets and the Soviet Union to reach their clutches into Africa. And I, like I said, I've seen Frank Zanu. I've seen his commentary here and there. And I know he speaks about this. I know and like you said, Keisha, this is key, because a huge part of it, and of course, first and foremost, it begins with superior ideas, of course, ideas. A lot of these, once these ideas become, like you said, mythologized, and they become sort of like the resting place of your culture, right? And then now you're working with something, and you have a society in Europe that upholds the individual and their property rights as sacrosanct, based upon these biblical principles. And that is what propelled the West past the rest of the world. And it had a lot to do with happenstance as well, because there was a very specific sort of environmental milieu in Europe that made the Industrial Revolution possible. Because with the advent of the steam engine and superior, military capabilities, thanks to the development of superior weaponry in Europe, because they were the best metallurgists and steel manipulators in the world, because Europe had three very unique items working on behalf of it, or they learned how to get these substances to work on behalf of them, and that's steel, iron, and coal.
Yep.
You don't have those things in sub-Saharan Africa. They
Right.
just don't have them.
Mm.
And so this is what propelled Europe, because for the longest time, they may set up trading posts and integrated themselves into pre-existing international markets, say like slavery, for example. When the Europeans reached the Americas, the natives here, what we call indigenous peoples, or whatever the political correct term is today, slave markets already existed here long before the Europeans even began to participate in the trade. They may have, like I said, by way of their own individual, their participation in the way they were able to extract, I guess, more from the market, if you even want to, go that route. But nevertheless, Europe didn't really begin to really push and go, beyond until probably midway through the 1900s, at the dawn of the Industrial Revolution. So there are some very unique and very particular factors, very precise things that occurred, and much of it has nothing to do with any sort of inherent. And this is the point, and I'll end. It had little, if anything, to do with any inherent racial animus or some sense of innate or inherent superiority. That was never true. That is a retroactive, that is a misnomer. That is present day ideologues inferring and reading modern day sensibilities into a people who did not think that way.
Yeah, I think that it's like, what came first, the egg or the chicken, and they don't realize that these gifts and talents were developed over time, because so it's a reaction to something that happened. And so, because your history is all wonky, and thing you ever the only conclusion you ever fall to is racism, and you never even poke and prod and see, why are these people so successful? What did they do? We don't even ask that question. What did they do? Let me see how I can. I mean, well, we were starting to ask that question, and we were doing it.
Hmm.
But then,
Right. Well, yeah,
Reverend Dr. Martin
because,
Luther
like I said, because the white man was trying to show these folks a better way of life.
hmm
And instead, like you said, instead of appreciating the gift, and looking at the situation around them and saying, hey, you know what? confess my sins, sacrifice my pride, learn how to forgive, take the things that are useful, and discard the things that don't work, and continue to move forward. They sought retribution, and they looked to the east, they looked to Moscow, because anti-imperialism became the in vogue left-wing movement, the leftist slogan of the day. I mean, beginning with the founding of the Communist Party in Chicago in 1919, all the way up until the creation of the New Left in the 1960s. How can we bring the promise of liberalism to its fulfillment? Well, we can do it through revolution.
Mm.
And it just didn't, it ended in disaster. And then you have these people running around still talking about the effects of colonialism and imperialism. But by that, they must mean Soviet imperialism. They surely aren't talking about British or French or Spanish or any other sort of imperialism. That's for sure.
They are. They just don't like it. They have some weird. They're in a delusion. Let me finish playing this.
Pushkin created the Russian language. He was a black man. So when you talk about where we are and where we've been, you also have to talk. See, when Frank was born, he inherited a culture. We had to make one with what we had. Some of us, if I were to swab any one of you, you would find some Nigerian, you would find some Ghanaian. Like, we had to hodgepodge, not to mention, out of all of the places that black people were forced into when we were slaves, 3% came to what we now consider the United States of America. And then we were bred over time. We were buck broken over time. They would take our women and grape them, out of respect for your channel. You know what I'm saying? Drop the G. And then on top of that, they had a split breast system. And the split breast system means that one breast would feed the white children of the slave master, and the other one would feed the black children that were going to be bought off and sold. We also have a situation where we had to face things that no other black person on the continent had to face. Taking our children and feeding them to alligators, lynching, Jim Crow, all of those things. And when you look at it, whether we choose to acknowledge it or not, the pulse of America runs through foundational black Americans. Who was the first person to die in the Revolutionary War? Crispus Attucks, black man, foundational black American, right? Harriet Tubman made the Underground Railroad and stopped it in Philadelphia. There are all of these things that have happened that make it who we are. Now, as a person who was the first black youth president of an organization called the National Conference of Christians and Jews, to Frank's point, I do agree, you don't really see your culture until you're out of it. So I'm a raisin and buttermilk in a conversation where there's a bunch of white Christians and a bunch of Jewish people, and they're like, hey, we do this. I'm like, no, black people don't do that. You know what I'm saying? From the way we walk, the way we talk, the way we eat, the way we move. Not to mention, you can't go anywhere on this earth without seeing our influence. The problem is, unlike any other black culture on the face of the planet, we have been colonized and monetized for profit by everyone, including the Koreans. K-pop ain't nothing but R&B. Let's call it what it is. And it's R&B under duress, because if you...
Okay.
When are you going to capitalize on the things that other groups of people all around the world have to offer you? You see what I'm saying, Keisha? You can't have it both ways. You can't talk about the brilliance of the diaspora, the African, wherever, because they're all sorts of folks who, like you said, have, people of color, people of various shades, and, people group themselves group themselves for various reasons into various groups.
Mm-hmm.
I just don't understand. You can't keep speaking to their brilliance whilst at the same time complaining about how they're always at the bottom.
Or like what Antonio Riggio just says. He talks about babies being fed to alligators. Meanwhile, the African American community has a high rate of abortions. It's like the double-mindedness. You can literally ignore current mass. You talk about a genocide. Current mass death because racism. It's just so ridiculous.
And
Go ahead.
I'm sorry, he's running. He's talking about how the man who invented the Russian language was a black man. He's talking about Crispus Attucks being the first casualty of the Revolutionary War. He's talking about he's running through all of these things in rapid fire succession for the purpose of doing what? For the purpose of getting anyone within an earshot who can identify with the so-called struggle to get filled with bitterness, rage, and anger. What did Frank Zanu say? The first clip you played when we started off this live, he said, if it's such a zero-sum game, and the only thing that you keep talking about is how much somebody is exploiting, oppressing, and getting over on you, then take your behind over there, kill the white man, and be done with it. Just get rid of him and be done with it.
Okay.
And go back to what I was saying. That's what the Africans tried. Okay, that's what they tried in the Democratic Republic of the Congo. They tried it in Zimbabwe. They tried it in Uganda. They tried it in Somalia. They tried it in Ethiopia. They tried it in Eritrea. They tried it in Angola. All of the Ghana. All of these African Marxist regimes, basing their entire political and societal structure on this cockamamie Western intellectual conception that was popularized by W.E.B. Du Bois and Marcus Garvey of Africa for the Africans. And what did they do when they ran off the brain trust? These countries fell into disarray.
Yeah.
They fell into decay, civil war, and countless military coups because they did not instead of learning from the white man, they looked a gift horse in the mouth and they began to resent him. And nothing grows out of that. Nothing good comes out of that kind of resentment. It just doesn't work. It just doesn't work.
Yeah. I mean, so why do you think that not we, because I honestly, I don't align myself with like black in that kind of a way. I don't, I'm racially black, and that's about as far as I take it. if I'm even going to say that. But what is it? Do you think that whenever there's not this notion that there's no unction, there's no like, you know what? Maybe we should look at what they did and learn from it. One thing that Frank did say is that blacks are not, and he's talking about Africans, anybody who has a connection to Africa around the world, don't do well with managing. It's like if you can't manage this country, like you were just saying, they come over there, and if you kick the whites out, everything falls to crap. You never even had indoor AC. How do you maintain the companies, the architecture? And then, like one of this other guys, I think I missed the clip, but one of the other guys that's hosting this is like, well, we built this country, we built it. And I hear that all the time. And I was just like, how do you mean? Do you mean that because he was trying to say it in a way that meant we are so responsible for America being here? But it's like, well, did you design it? Did you design the roads? Were you a part of the architecture? The architecture designs, the what do they call it? When they organize, they figure out how this road is going to connect to that road and how the blueprint of the building and all of that. Were you there? Were you doing that? Because if you were just labor, and I don't mean that in a bad way, because that provided, you were able to feed your family, but you can't expect, that is the bottom of the, that's the last part. Finding somebody to actually lay the brick. Okay. The harder part is actually the blueprints, the architecture, the design of how the roads are going to flow and work, and the engineering and doing all. I don't think he was involved in doing most of that stuff. So it's like, it's just figments of people's imaginations. You're not thinking past, you're not thinking to the next thought. And so why, Chuck, why is there never an examination of why aren't we asking the question of how do we do how do we copy greatness, basically? You know how there's a saying, copy greatness.
Yeah, well, a lot of it has to do, whether these individuals are conscious of this or not. And I've talked about this in the past, and I've talked about Karl Marx's conception of value. Right? It's a Marxist idea. It's a Marxist or Marxian economic within Karl Marx's economic framework. Labor, there is nothing of value apart from labor. And so when you hear these people and they say that, well, we built America, obviously, right? Because we were the slaves. It's this primitive accumulation theory. It's like, prior to the advent of modern day markets, you had this sort of proto-capitalism, like sort of like a quasi feudal regime here in the United States. And it was through that process that those who could, for various reasons, physically dominate other peoples, they were able to extract the value of their labor for their own benefit. And it was from that, and within that sort of phenomena, that relationship, that interplay, right, they were able to amass this great wealth. And right, and again, there's no mention of exactly uh, uh where the capital even comes from to create the market demand for said labor in the first place. Where does it even come from? Like, for example, and I think this hits the nail on the head. For example, a lot of people talk about how, because this is a part of the white man's entire rap sheet. This is part of his whole docket, everything that he's guilty of. Right, one of the major things that the white man is guilty of, he's guilty of stealing the land. Right, the amount of money that he sold, the amount of money that he purchased Wisconsin for, right, when the Dutch came in and they settled huge swaths of the northeastern seaboard, right, Manhattan chiefly among it, right? And said, well, they cheated the Native Americans because the Native Americans didn't know what they had. That's not true, because that's not how economics works, right? An economic transaction has to be mutually beneficial, right? It's not a zero-sum game. In other words, just because something has a price tag on it, it doesn't mean that that particular thing that has that price tag on it is going to be worth whatever the price tag says to me if I have no use or if I have no value from it.
Right.
You make decisions based upon the limited amount of knowledge that you have at any given time, and you're working against the clock because time is of the essence, because human beings are not static in this way. We're far too dynamic to remain mute and still. So in other words, if I see something, and if I have a certain amount of money in my pocket, and if I have enough money to purchase that thing, then whatever that thing is worth more to me than the money that I am willing to exchange for it. Because by default, whenever there's an economic transaction, something is gained and something is lost. Okay. Europeans saw value in land because they lived a certain lifestyle and they came from a particular place where agriculture as an institution was of the utmost importance, versus a quasi sedentary people like Native Americans, who were predominantly hunter gatherers, who didn't see value in land. So you can't retroactively again say, no. You took that from them, or they were cheated, or they didn't understand what they had, right? Because what they thought they had, or what they even knew, they see, whatever they had, Keisha, is what they had at the time. The land would not become valuable until it was under the stewardship of people whose human capital couldn't infuse that natural thing, that inanimate thing with its value. That's how markets get created. Native Americans were participating in the market just like everyone else, and they extracted from those market interactions value based upon what was important to them. If they were hunters, they didn't need land because they didn't live a sedentary lifestyle. The value of the land came after the fact, once it got into the hands of individuals who actually knew what to do with it. When you're talking about building a country, it is no different. It is no different. Slavery does not build wealth. Slavery does not build wealth. It doesn't work that way.
You know what Frank said? He was like, you say you built the country. He was like, y'all were in the South picking, doing, he was like, they came, you helped because they needed you to, I forget the word he used, but basically maintain their stuff. He said, you didn't come to nothing. You came, you were slaves and there was a house. So it wasn't like you built, there was already this stuff going on. You didn't come to just, a desert land, and you was just, you didn't come to that. There was already a system, a building and thriving and flourishing and trying to become what the vision that they had. It's just so frustrating because it's here. But I just want to read what Kevin Briggins when Kevin comes in the room.
And he's running through it. But, Pastor Briggins, and I don't know if Kevin Briggins is a pastor, but I'm teasing him. But this guy, he's running through all of these things, like I said, in rapid fire succession to get you riled up when each and every claim that he's making. And this goes back to, I think I heard Thomas Sowell say this once. He said, the unfortunate part about the truth is that sometimes it can take the length of a book to dispel a lie that can be put on the back of a bumper sticker. That's the unfortunate part. That's why, or that old saying that, the truth cannot stand, but it has wings and can fly. And unfortunately, a lie can fly around the world before the truth can even get his pants on.
Right.
He's going through all these things, just like, whoa, slow down, bro. Because each and every last thing you are saying deserves its own moment to breathe, so we can unpack what it is that you're saying, Keisha. Because in my mind, you know how I think. I pour extra seasoning on everything. Sometimes I wish I could just shut up, but my mind just takes over and I can't stop talking. He went. I'm still thinking about something he said a few clips ago, talking about the 13th and 14th Amendment and civil rights and everything. I'm like, you don't even know what you're talking about when it comes to those amendments. So I'm still thinking about that, and that was like an hour ago. So anyway, what did Kevin say?
He does serve as a lay pastor. Why we knew that though? Why we knew it, but we didn't know it. That's so funny. Oh man. Okay. Oh shoot. He's frozen. Let me see. Where's my? Let's see. We're gonna. Okay, I'll just pull him down until he comes back up. Here's the little rest of this clip.
You look at what happened with Megan Thee Stallion when she was dealing with those K-pop girls. She was like, oh, it's serious up in here. Because if they miss a step, they get what Joe Jackson gave Mike and them, but worse. There are all of these things that take place that no one wants to talk about. So no, we don't have a language because we weren't allowed to speak our language under penalty of death. When you talk about you can't come to the cookout and things of that nature, people forget picnic is an abbreviated slang term, which means you get to picnic to lynch. Postcards.
Yeah, so we weren't allowed to keep our own language is what he says. And what Frank Zanu says in the rest of the clip, or in other parts of the clip, he says that when the slave masters, or when the trade was happening, that they picked people from, they had people from different tribes. So this whole idea of, just because we came from West Africa, then everybody spoke the same language. Everybody did not speak the same language. It just, so he's like, we weren't able to speak our own language because we would be killed. Like, who were you going to talk to? Like, it wasn't, I don't think, it sounds like people were just, from what I understand about African history and that in the slave trade, is that people were picked from different parts of the area, so they didn't all speak the same language. So what do you say about that?
Yeah, I missed it. My phone was acting crazy.
Oh,
But
okay.
what you said that he said that
He just went on to cap it all off and say we couldn't even speak our own language or we would be killed.
man, bro, I don't know, Key. I mean, so what? I mean, I don't. It gets to the point where it's like you don't even want to address a lot of the claims that he's making, because see, slavery was far. It was an expansive institution. There were a multitude of groups involved, different groups, different individuals. Okay, there were certain stipulations, regulations, laws that govern the trading and selling of slaves, the rights of slaves, and so on. Different. I mean, I just, to act like there was just widespread abuse of slaves throughout. I don't even know what he's talking about. Is he talking about the British Empire? Is he talking about the Spanish Empire? Is he talking about the French Empire? Is he talking about the Dutch Empire? Is he going all the way back to the days of the Italian city states? I have no idea
Talking
what
about American slavery.
is talking about.
But
So
he's not, I mean, is it the North? Is it the South? What state? Because every state that had slaves did not operate the same. Every state was not Mississippi. Every state, and actually, like from what I understand, Mississippi and Alabama were probably the worst. Everybody else, it wasn't. I hate, you can't say it wasn't that bad because people will absolutely lose their minds, but it was not as harsh. Nowhere was as harsh as I believe Mississippi and Alabama. I think pretty much. Anyway, I'll leave it right there.
But even when you study, Keisha, and you understand language and the role that language plays when it comes to culture, intelligence, psychology, you learn within. And of course, I'm not a linguist, obviously. Maybe we need to call up somebody like Noam Chomsky or something. But you right. Look at your eyes lit up. Don't call that clown. You think within the context of language, and sometimes language as symbol, it sort of sets the contextual ceiling on your understanding. And so we, as when you speak English, and I know this is going to sound very simple, but it's simple, but at the same time, it is also true. Because when you speak English, you think English. Okay, when you speak English, you think like an Englishman, and you inherit, you receive that, because along with those words, those symbols, those complex utterances that make up the human language, it allows your mind to go into areas that you otherwise would not go into, because you don't have the word by which to use in order to make reference to a concept. You can't think it if you can't speak it. You can't think it if you don't know the word. And so when we speak the English language, we're bringing the ideas of Adam Smith and David Hume and John Locke and all the great English speaking thinkers from Thomas Hobbes and Thomas Paine and John Stuart Mill, whether you agree with all their ideas or not, is irrelevant, because I take up issues with a lot of great men that did a lot in terms of the Western mind. There's a book. I don't even have it sitting around here. It's one of the must-have books. I remember first reading this book when I was 23 years old. It was written by a man named Richard Turnus. It's called The Passion of the Western Mind. Why, again, he acts as though, I'm going to reference it again. You guys should pick it up and read it. Passions of the Western Mind. Why in the world does he think that it would be a good idea for a slave and the descendants of slaves not to assimilate into the culture of his slave master? This is unique to this. I mean, this is not a unique thing. This is part and parcel of the process of what you want to call it, subjugation and dominance and this and that. You see, when you speak about history, and this is the thing, this is what he's doing. This is what's pissing me off about this guy. Okay, because he's dressing it up, he's spinning a web, and he's telling a narrative for the purpose of promoting a moral melodrama instead of explaining historical phenomena dispassionately and objectively for the purpose of education and learning. What he's trying to do is he's promoting ideology by telling narratives instead of simply stating facts. Because the reality is that the history of human existence is not one of good guys versus bad guys and evil people and good people. Yes, there are evil people who done evil things, good people who done great things, but not evil sides and good sides, and these over here and them over there. It is not that easy. Human history is far more complicated than that. It is not a moral melodrama, because sometimes the reason why human beings, blacks in this case in particular, in the United States, the reason why you look at them on mass as a group, and you may see all of these issues. You see these issues for a myriad of reasons, not simply as a result or as they exist, as the group exists currently. Their current lot is not the end result of a long historical centuries old process of oppression. There's more to the story than that. And someone in his position, Keisha, he should know that, because oppression is not the only answer. That's not the only answer. People agency, they make decisions and they make choices. They make trade-offs. It's not simply about oppression. The human story is far more complicated than that.
You know, I had this analogy the other day. I was thinking the way that oftentimes oh, by the way, if you disagree with what we're saying, please click the link in the chat and you can come on up and let your voice be heard. You don't have to come up. You don't have to put your face on camera, but click the link and come on up. So it's like you have this complex machine, right? Let's just say a calculator. It does all these things, and it happens to be silver, which is a silver calculator. Now, you see this other machine. It's a toaster, and it's also silver. Instead of you investigating all the things that this calculator can do, you just superficially look at machinery and say, silver, it's a toaster. You don't, you just see the outside and you just say that it's a toaster. You don't look, you try to take something so complex like a calculator and can do all these things, and you try to simplify it into this just one thing. Okay, well, it's silver, and toasters are silver, so this must be a toaster. That's how the Black American has become to think about other human beings, particularly white ones. They think that this complex human being when they make decisions, when they whatever they do, their history or whatever, it's always just this simple-minded, superficial reason. Racism. It's just like everything that they've decided that everything that this complex human being does, if they don't agree with it, or if they do agree with it, they're gonna simplify it down to just like this really superficial thing. And I mean, we see it over and over and over. It's just like, oh, you're white, you did this, racist. See, figured it out, done. Like that's what aggravates me about this so much. I don't mind the disagreement, but at least if you're going to disagree, give me something more. Oh, it's racism. That is so stupid. It's so myopic and just simple-minded. You mean to tell me in 2026 that's all you got? I mean, it just shows. Sorry, I know I'm getting upset, but it infuriates me because you're not pressing your own thoughts. You ain't checking your own self. Am I thinking about this the right way? You don't go back and check to see if what you thought actually makes sense. Is it factual? No. All you need to know is that black bad, white good, black bad. I mean, it's just dumb. I'm just so we are too far. There is so much information that is available to literally everybody.
Yeah.
Kids 13, 14, 15 years old can go online and literally give you a better history lesson than half of these adults. It's ridiculous.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh.
Let me just say, I've been ignoring, a lot of the comments, trying to focus on our conversation. But just briefly, for the people who commented on the last thing I said, let me just say something. Like I said, I prefaced my comment by saying that, I don't specialize in linguistics. But if you have an issue with the study of language and thought, I mean, there's the cognitive sciences are clear on this, that there's a clear-cut connection within the cognitive sciences between language and thought. You take it up, there are mountains upon mountains of literature on the topic, and you can just get into it yourself. I'm not going to go into the particulars, but you take it up with the folks who specialize in the discipline. But the fact of the matter is that there is a clear-cut connection between language and thought. And if you think, and not to say that this is anyone watching, but of course, language also has a lot to do with cultural continuity. And when, of course, a society is unstable or partner, whether this is causation or just simply simply correlation, the society, of course, cannot function. The people cannot come together when they are divided along linguistic lines. There is no social cohesion, and then what that does is that domino falls, and then that knocks another aspect over, because when there are barriers to communication, there's barriers in trust, and when there are barriers in trust, that's when morality begins to break down, because there is no civic pride and no sense of national unity and identity, because there is no trust, there is no continuity, and everyone begins to break apart, and then tribalism and balkanization begins to tear at the seams of the society, starting with one thing, and that's a breakdown in communication in language. You cannot just have a bunch of people speaking whatever language they want to speak.
Tower of Babel. I was just about to say that, Megan. The Tower of Babel is first of all, the Bible does talk about the connection of thought and words. Jesus says, my word is seed. He says, in the beginning, there was the word. He is the very word. Thought, conscious reason. That's a spiritual thing. Like and then the thought starts somewhere out there and then comes through your brain It's just so much Bible between thought and language. I didn't even see the
I'm,
comments.
I'm,
I mean,
I'm, I'm not gonna argue. You just okay, whatever.
and
All right.
stimulated student said it too. Logos doesn't just mean word; it also means an overarching thought. Yes,
Yeah.
logos is thought. It is thought. I mean, come on. Where do the words come from? If you don't have that, then you cannot communicate. And words are. This is why Marxists are always trying to change definitions because they understand the power of thought and language and words. Because if you can change the definition, the meaning, you can change the culture. Why do you think that people don't even flinch? They don't make a move when you say reproductive rights. What do you think that is? I don't know who got a problem with language and thought and what Chuck said. He is right. This is biblical. Like, what are we talking about? This is, I don't know. Maybe this is a biblical based channel. So we talk about these kinds of things all the time. I don't know if you are new here, but please, if you are a believer, you need to read your Bible. You need to understand thoughts and words. Go read what Jesus says about words.
Yeah, I guess I didn't even think of that, Keisha. I didn't even think to bring, and I'm glad you brought the divine angle into it. I was just thinking more so just on a secular level, dealing with the social sciences. But yeah, absolutely right.
Kevin says we just not gonna touch on picnic and picking.
Well, he said I told you my connection was bad. I must have missed that. He said that.
Yeah, I think did he?
No, you ain't gotta play it back. No, I listen. I was.
He definitely said it. Let's see if we can find it because I'm definitely
Please don't punish me. Oh.
No, we got to listen. We got to go through this because it's interesting because you have this African saying, no, look at the bigger picture. And then you have these Black Americans who want to be so connected to Africa. And he's like, it's all the same, my guy. And it's just so good. Such a good conversation. All right, here we go.
I expect on all the things he has listed. I might have read about them, but you see, every time I read something or I encounter a story, my mind works in that way because I'm an critical thinker. All right. I have also known societies in the world that once upon a time were prevented to do anything. They were prevented to do anything. Like the Jews is an example of it. Indians were an example for 81 years by the British. They couldn't build, innovate, do anything. They have to rely on the white people, right? And you can go down Koreans the same way. However, I believe in something called the second advantage, meaning when the phenomena is over, you should repeat it. So somebody gave me the first lecture about Tulsa, Oklahoma. And I said, what year was that? Quite a long time ago, right? Okay. At one time in this country, you and we will not have an opportunity to do certain things. But if that ability to build Black Wall Street is innate, why haven't we repeated it?
Because we cannot.
Because we cannot. Why haven't we repeated it?
That was his response. Because the idea is that whenever Black folks do build something, white folks will just come and burn it down. We all remember that clip that went viral of the big fat ugly Black woman with the braids going off. You remember that clip that went viral, and then she was talking about how the white man dropped it. You remember that clip? Everybody's seen it. You all in the comment section know what I'm talking about. She's talking about, you drop bombs on us and Tulsa, and we don't own anything. We don't own anything. Yeah, I mean, she was talking about, trying to make excuses for the riots and for the vandals. Yeah, and like you said, it's to the extent that we do, the white man will just come in and burn it all down. And again, that's not true. Frank Zanu is 100% correct. Because the know-how, the value is not in the thing. The value is in the individual. It's in the person. It's in the mind. It's in the mind. You take those skills with you. You take them wherever you go. That's why whenever you give the people the airspace to breathe, when you allow the people to function and allow them to flourish, you will see what individuals are capable of. You will see what individuals are actually made of. This is why, and I say that, I preface that, I put out that preface because, of course, I can't help but think about the one group that Dr. Thomas Sowell refers to as the model middleman minority, which has historically been the Jew. They thrive wherever they go because human capital, it transcends space and time in many instances, so long as the people are allowed to express what latent potential lies within. Right. And this is what makes America so unique and so special and so important. I was listening to someone earlier and they were talking about how
expect all the things he has listed.
Sorry.
When you're good. When Greek society was on the decline and it was essentially conquered by the Romans, the Romans were appreciative of the system that they had inherited from the Greeks. And the Greeks took Hellenism and they just exported it as far as they could. That was within their reach. Essentially, the United States did the exact same thing with the ideas of the English. And so it's that exact same relationship. We are to England what Rome was to Greece. And so that is why we have this, for better or for worse. And mind you, this is no utopia, obviously. It's believers, we don't believe that man is capable of achieving such a thing. But the reason why we're able to build wealth is not slave labor. We build wealth because we have a culture of liberty. Let's see what you got.
Okay, so you said that the Greeks, so Rome built, I don't remember. I don't know. It was the Grecian Empire, the Roman. I don't know which one was. I think it was the Roman Empire first.
Yeah. Well. See, it was the Greeks. The Greeks were broken up into smaller, what they call city states. And so, because they were separate, they were different. They all considered themselves to be, connected in a way, but also there was a respect for their differences, because
so
they were
states and states and America, kind of united but separate. Okay,
exactly, because you had the Spartans, and you had the Athenians, you had the Thebans, and then you had the Macedonians, and all. But the only negative aspect about that is you could say, well, when you have smaller political structures and jurisdictions, you have a more accountable government because, right, it's smaller, right, and you are literally within physical reach of the decision makers within your society, right?
Which was the concept in America too. That's the local government,
right? But again, okay, either extreme is bad because there are pluses and negatives, and every system that at least that comes from a human mind, right? And so you can imagine with the Greek city states, they were smaller, which made them more susceptible to capture and conquer because of their relatively small size. And this is why various city states at different times will create what we commonly refer to today as confederations or federations, right? You had Native American confederations, you had different types. And so at various times, the Greeks may had different confederations, but they also warred with one another because they saw themselves as mutually the same in a sense, but they also didn't see themselves as being like them over there. We're not quite like them. We're similar, but we're not exactly the same. Right? The Spartans and the Athenians were different. They were different. And of course, it wasn't.
Okay. Question. Now, They were a homogenous people, right? They all looked the same.
Yeah, they all look the same, but they had different cultures,
Culture,
slightly different
tribes.
dialects. Right, slightly different dialects, different deities that they worship, different dress,
Mm,
different symbols that may have meant different things.
yes.
You
Okay,
know,
so I want to get into this. I want because this is to me, this is where the crux of the matter is culture, which is what they talk. This whole thing blew up. This Frank Zander, he says Black Americans have no culture, and he's like, music isn't culture, which I'm like, I think art is culture. So art, whatever falls into art, but at the crux of all of culture is value. God, what to me, I say culture is ultimately the God that you worship, because how do you get the values that you express through your culture? Like, that's kind of like how I see it.
mhm,
So when you had this homogenous group of people
mhm,
who they divided themselves up into their different regions,
mhm.
why were they, because I mean, I don't know much about how Greece, whatever happened, and all that, but that's okay. That's similar to America. Now I know that their people weren't brought there from another place. They kind of they weren't forced divided. They divided themselves up naturally, it sounds like. But why were they able to what was the core thing? They had to have a core thing in common in order for that to work. So do you know, like, what was the thing that they were able to hold on to, which is kind of like what America is.
Yeah,
We've tried to create this thing that we can, yes, we're from these different places, but this thing unites us: freedom, liberty, the whole thing. What was it for the Greeks?
you know what? That's a very interesting question, and of course, classical Greek history, of course, is not my forte. I'll just kind of speaking about it, more broadly. But there were some like or things that developed organically that caused a kind of a synthesis or commonality amongst these different groups who again divided themselves along political lines for the purpose of maintaining a culture within, as they saw it for their time, of freedom and property rights, accountable government, and a lot of the concepts that we still believe in, a lot of the concepts that we value today. And so that's a very, very loaded question.
Mm-hmm.
But they had common gods, literature, the yes, yeah. I mean that's it. I mean they had common literature, common language,
Mm-hmm.
God, common gods. That's a very, very loaded question, but that is as simple as I can put it. Like I said, they had religion in common, they had language in
Mm-hmm.
common, they had they had values in common.
Values. You have to have values in common, because when you look at the Black American, once that break of values happened in the 60s, that break from righteous values, and they decided to take on these wicked values, that's where you see more of a break in the country. I know slavery and all of that, but it's fascinating that even after slavery, they Black Americans came out and saw all the opportunity. They, from what I can see, and now I know I'm not saying every single one, I'm just saying, like, in general, there was certainly a progression of success. Like, they were becoming so successful, and so it's like there's no thought to like,
Let-
it's so frustrating. It's like there's no thinking back to, okay, we used to be this. What did we lose? You can't, it's like, how do you not see that there has been a value change? You can literally see people in the 50s dressed nice. They had their own homes, they had their own cars, they yes, they were segregated, but so what? Like, they were thriving. Who cares?
Right.
It's like,
Well,
today, it's frustrating because people today are still saying this foolishness, and you got all the opportunity to look back and dissect and dig in and all of this. You can't do it biblically. Your faith is off. It's wrong. It's not rooted in truth. Your own American, your interpretation of American history is off. It's fake. It's false. That ain't true. It's like there is nothing that they believe now that's like rooted in facts.
Yeah.
It's just a bunch of.
Well, see, that you can say it's the it's the impact and the influence that that Marxism has had on our society. And again, you have to understand the different elements of Marxist thought. There were utopians and socialists before Marx. You had the method of what would become Leninism by his time in France in the late 1700s, with the French revolutionists, as they called them back then, with a man named Henri Saint-Simon and another French revolutionary. I forget his first name, but his last name is Babeuf. All of these men were, idolized by revolutionaries across Europe, the world over. And then once, Marx really, once he took a lot of these French Enlightenment ideas, he was very fond of a lot of Greek thinkers like Epicurus, Lucretius, Heraclius, not Heraclius, not Heraclius. What was his name? Anyway, that's not important. But the reality is that it was a long progression, and then Marx began to also incorporate a lot of German Gnosticism and German mysticism into his philosophy, and out came this unique thing that we today refer to as Marxism. But it's very important, and the reason why I brought up all of this is to bring it back to the French revolutionists and the French revolutionaries and their admiration of Jean-Jacques Rousseau, who made much ado about this, when it came to this notion that mankind, that human beings must be put back in their natural state, the natural state of nature. It was all of these forces that were sort of foisted upon man externally that corrupted him and shifted him away and removed him from the natural state of being. So we must take the savage and bring the savage and put him back in the city. So when you ask the question, you say, man, how in the world? These are just briefly kind of running through some of the ideas of Rousseau. Again, you cannot understand Marxism, and you cannot understand how Marxism functions politically and socially and everything else if you don't at least familiarize yourself to some degree with the ideas of Jean-Jacques Rousseau. Because how Blacks were to regain their sense of self is that from a Rousseauian point of view, they had to return back to their state of nature. In other words, they had to embrace criminality and barbarism and sexual hedonism, because all of these things were attempts at trying to overthrow the cultural hegemony that was foisted upon them as a result of the colonial process, because all acts of criminality have a political tinge to them, because that's the only political outlet for the Black man is criminality. It's not that he is simply going outside the bounds of politeness and polite society. He wants to be an outlaw. He wants to exist on the outskirts of the law simply because he's a bad person. No, his violation of the law is in fact a political act. It is a revolutionary act. And this became something that many started to encourage by the 1950s, 1960s. It really sort of began in the 1940s, and everything sort of came to a head with and it may be unfair to put all of this at the feet of this one individual, but this was a very important book for its time, and it still is today, because he became a model of the new authentic Black person. We're talking about Black identity, and that was Eldridge Cleaver, a self-admitted sexual abuser who wrote his memoir Soul on Ice from prison, where he was serving a sentence for, I think it was attempted, may have been attempted murder. I can't remember what Eldridge Cleaver was in prison for a while. He wrote Soul on Ice. But if you read Soul on Ice, the entire left-wing academic media journalism establishment went gaga. They went crazy in a positive way over Eldridge Cleaver's Soul on Ice. And all of the entire left-wing establishment said, ha ha, that is a unique this Black man has something worthwhile to say to us, because this is an example of what happens when we don't get society right. We create men like him. And he is the lesson. He is the mirror to America, that if we don't change these structures, we're going to create legions of Eldridge Cleavers, because he is not a perpetrator against someone else. He is merely the victim of society writ large. And if we can fix society, then we won't have any more individuals running around the likes of Eldridge Cleaver. But everything he said, I'm gonna let you jump back in. Can I make one more point?
Oh,
if I may. To bring it back full circle, you mentioned the Greeks. Like I said, similar gods, literature, culture. They all, Homer, the Odyssey, the Iliad, all that is part of Greek culture. They politically divided themselves up into these polises, or the politeia, which we refer to as these smaller Greek city-states, and that existed for a while until the time of Alexander. Okay, but even before that, and I always say this, I said that Judaism and then later on Christianity, right? Because because of Judaism, the gift of salvation was granted to the whole of humanity. But it is through that spiritual process, through that revelatory process, that some of the ideas of the ancient Greeks prior to the revelation were merely crystallized, and the truth was made clear. Because even prior to Aristotle, I believe it was Aristotle who once talked about, because this was the seedling of this notion of self-governance. I mean, why do we believe, particularly as conservatives, that the government should be limited? Because we were going to impose restrictions upon ourselves. Because whenever law is enacted to compel behavior, that's a person who is out of step with what is proper. In other words, he is out of step with God. Because if we were perfect people, of course, our founding fathers came to the realization that we wouldn't need law if we were capable of being perfect people.
Right.
But you must try to deny yourself, to deny your appetites. And that is, in essence, what self-governance means. And it's an ongoing tradition, like we mentioned, from the Greeks to the Romans, to the Europeans, and now to the Americans. And once we started to openly embrace hedonism and began to question the boundaries of what is acceptable, then inevitably we will render ourselves incapable of self-governance, because you are supposed to impose restrictions upon yourself. You are supposed to deny yourself.
Man, you mean like beating the flesh down every day, killing the flesh? You see these things that I in what you're saying, when we look at European history, when we look at people who have been successful, they seem to apply certain principles that somehow seem to always align with the Bible. Now, that doesn't mean that you have to be a Christian to to do them, because there are just certain things in the earth that God has already set up. If you jump over a building, gravity, there are certain laws that are just God has already instilled into what.
I'm just laughing. Yeah, I'm sorry. I gotta stay out of the conversation. I'm not trying to be. I'm not trying to be mean. I guess I'm in a good mood, but I am reading some stupid stuff tonight. Somebody in the comment section said, and I get it. Fiction may not be your forte, but I gotta read this comment. And I'm not saying it's stupid because, like I said, fiction may not be your forte. I'm not a huge fiction guy.
Yeah.
But somebody said I don't like any work of fiction as they lay out for real society. Like, I mean, that's just silly. That's just a silly thing. That's just a silly thing to say. No. He didn't mention the Bible. He didn't say the Bible. But I'm just saying, like, it's general saying that fiction. Like, are you serious? So Virgil, Dante, Wordsworth, Homer. You think that Shakespeare? Nothing. None of these works has any relevance to real society. I just, what a peculiar thing to say. I'm not even going to address that. I'm just going to let that sit there. Go ahead, Keisha. I'm sorry, but I cut you off. I mean, Dante is Inferno by itself. Just go. I'm sorry. I'm sorry.
Yeah, and Megan says the Iliad. Simulated Student says Paul wrote in Romans that law is for the unrighteous, that a righteous man is a law unto himself. I mean, God pretty much says that in the Old Testament too. Because it's because the Jews were, getting all out of control. It's like, look, let me give you some rules to live by, which obviously was for everybody. But gosh, anyway, let me play this clip.
But we built something. Clearly, Black Americans have built throughout slavery and the culture that we have currently.
What I'm asking is, give me an example so I'll be able to respond to that particular thing.
Well, like things like gospel is something that we built after slavery.
Songs and music,
the foods that we eat, that we consume.
Sure, songs and music exist in every society.
Is that not a part of culture?
No.
Okay, so when he said that, is that not a part of culture? He says, no, it's not a part of culture. Why is music not a part of culture? Why do you think he because he doesn't really get into why he says that music is not a part of culture, but I wonder if he means art in general or just like music and whatever that other thing was that he said. And do you think that that's true?
No, I don't think that's true. I don't think that's true. Like I said, I know the clip goes on and the conversation goes on. I don't know if Frank ever comes back, and it's certain when a certain individual says a certain thing, and when that person has done well to establish their bona fides, sometimes when they say something, you can almost predict one-to-one that's not exactly what they meant.
Right.
Or
yeah.
you ask them further, you know what I mean? It's like,
there's some moments in here where you can definitely see that. Yeah.
I think he was trying to respond, and when you consider the context, I think he was trying to respond to the comments that were just made to say that if you're talking about an upward societal trajectory, right? It's not just simply about being able to make music and dance and act and entertain. On its face, there's nothing wrong with those things on their face. Let's get that clear. There is nothing inherently wrong with being a talented entertainer. There's virtue in that. But what I think Frank Alexander was trying to say is that there is more to the story. There's more to this picture here, And I think that him just being in that kind of environment, sort of like in a debate type format, I think that he may have just slightly misspoke there, and kind of just in order to make a point, he overstated. Gotcha. But precisely what he meant. And let me just say to Joe, to the person that made a comment about fiction. Like I said, I wasn't trying to say you was stupid or nothing, bro. Like I said, on its face, fiction, and you just cleared it up for me because you were probably leaving a comment in reference to something that was said earlier. You said you can't compare Ayn Rand to Shakespeare, and I totally agree. I saw some of Ayn Rand's ideas were good, but Ayn Rand, I mean, Ayn Rand was she wasn't it. She had some good ideas.
She did.
She survived the horrors of communism, made her way to the United States, and she said a lot of good things, and some of her ideas were good, but Ayn Rand leaves a lot to be desired, and there's surely no comparison between Ayn Rand and Shakespeare. You are correct, sir. So hope I didn't offend you, but like I said, I was just reading that one comment.
Yeah, I mean, Ayn Rand, I get why people like her, especially in this moment in time. Like, I get it. But yeah, I'm like, she was on to something, but it's like, I don't know. Okay, I have a hard time with people that are atheist. Like, I have friends that are atheists, but I have a hard time with somebody that I don't know that's an atheist, because atheists come in all types of different ways. And when people think that something came from nothing, I'm like, it's hard for me to take you serious. Like,
Yeah.
huh? Like, you're gonna have a really good, I don't know, I have to know you personally. Like, I can't, like, but atheists that I'm just like, something, how you get that? Like, it's just like, you ask somebody like Uncle Tom speaks, he's just like, blacks be like 1 + 1. Oh yeah, that's 11. It's the same thing. Oh yeah, something came from nothing. I got a hard time taking it seriously. When I found out she was I'm like, okay, I'm with you. Like, and then I'm like, forget it. Like, there's no point. Like, I don't know. That was the thing for me.
And there were some issues in her philosophy, I will say.
Yeah. I can't remember what I disagree with, but I do remember when I was.
Well, I mean, she spent the last couple of years of her life, very angry and bitter, and I mean, that she was a vehemently outspoken critic of the Reagan administration. And part of what turned her, well, I don't want to say turned her against Reagan, because I don't know if she was ever for Reagan at any point, but she really took issue with his stance against abortion. And
Oh yeah. See, it was issues like that. That is like, it makes everything that you say for nothing, because if you don't even believe in life, in preserving it, then what are you even talking about? Like, see, it just. Anyway, I did want to answer this question though.
The virtue of selfishness that you talked about it, but it's not that simple.
Right, it's not that simple. So Joe must say, so atheist makes less sense than even someone who is of a completely different faith, like the Asian religions do. Yes, because at the very least, they understand that there is something that transcends them. I mean, you might be worshiping the wrong God from a Christian perspective, but at least you understand that there is a spiritual realm. You understand that thought comes from a place. You know what I mean? So for me, yes, atheist makes less sense than somebody believing in a false deity, because you're saying that something came from nothing. What else did I want to respond to? Somebody said, Ryan. Hi, Ryan. I don't know. I mean, I'm just like, you just love to stick around over here. Well, how are you? How you doing? What did God come from? What did God come from? Well, if God was created, then I don't think he would be God. So he is an uncreated being. He has always existed. He swears by himself. you know, he is uncreated. So nothing created God, Ryan.
Yeah.
He has always existed. You have life and thought. You the whole reason why you can even question God is because of God. The whole ability to think the question is because of God. It's amazing how American Christians have all the answers because we read the Bible. That's why. And the Bible is full of answers. We got answers for this. This is light work, okay? Literally, light and light.
Yeah. Right. See what she did there? He didn't get it. It went over his head.
He didn't get it, but you got it. Y'all got it.
I don't know what Christians he speaks to that says that they know all the answers.
Let's see.
Mind screw, out of respect for your channel, that we have been put under. So no, we don't have an official language because we weren't allowed to have one. But still, if you look at AAVE, it's everywhere. And when it comes out of our mouth, it goes from the hood to the boardrooms to a billboard on Broadway or in Times Square. So we have culture, we have influence. And no, I'm not just talking about taking what's the word I'm looking for? Weeds and turning them into collard greens, or taking innards and turning them into chitterlings. I'm talking about the fact that we have persevered and we are the most copied individuals on the planet. So much so, if I'm wrong, please explain Akon to me. Please explain Burna Boy to me. They all do a variation of who we are. And I'm not just talking about music. I'm talking about the walk. I'm talking about the talk. I'm talking about the hairstyles. I'm talking about.
Okay, this is not culture. See this that whole like how you walk. Okay, let me take that back, because that can be a cultural thing. Like, you can look at a group of people and say, okay, their tribe, their group, they have a particular walk. Let me take that back. But the way in which he is talking about it is okay. Here's the thing. If you realize that that is your contribution to your society, cool. All right. The music, you know, the particular sports that we tend to watch in America, you know, all the things that Black people are looked at successful: music, fashion. If Chad O. Jackson was here, we've had this debate before. He would disagree, but music. Do you remember that, Chuck?
Yeah, I remember.
Let's see, music. Anyway, y'all know the thing: sports, whatever. Why haven't you? The question still remains. It doesn't go away. Why haven't you taken the things that you are good at and monetized them and made them a work for you? If you're so good at that particular thing, everybody else did. The Germans, they got pianos everywhere. They got, you know, the Chinese have their thing. Everybody's got their thing. Where is your culture of cool and making everything cool? How come you haven't gone into the Googles and the Apples of the world and said, hi, I'm here, we have an established enterprise of making your business cool? Why haven't you made that offer to them, so when they put the stuff on the billboards that you get paid? I don't like, how come you haven't cultivated that amongst yourselves if you are just so good at it?
Keisha, what's so amazing to me is he's rattling off all of these things, and he's naming all of these individuals as if I'm supposed to feel some sense of connection to them because, well, we are mutually classified as Black, I suppose, but their talent is all their own. It wasn't bequeathed to me by God Almighty. I can't sing, I can't dance. That's not what I do. So I couldn't care less about the talent of another individual. And I don't know the terms of whatever sort of interaction said individual had you know, throughout the duration of their careers. And if they, in fact, once again, to go back to some of the common theme that I've been saying over and over again, if they were able to extract something of value from those business interactions within the entertainment industry, that's their business. It's not mine. The reality is that to become, successful, and whatever, however you define success, but to have wealth and fame and these kinds of things within the entertainment industry, that is a very unique field and a very unique market in and of itself. And regardless of race, very few people succeed at a high level within that industry in general. And it doesn't help that, of course, blacks are only roughly about 13 to 14% of the general population. You add that on to the fact that learning how to take a talent and to bring that talent to market, how to know how to successfully do business, network, coordinate, contractual law, all the things that are needed to bring certain things to market. Those are the kinds of talents that the individuals who may make the music and do the dances and dunk the basketballs and do all the things, those are talents and skills that they themselves may not possess. Now, it does not mean that they're incapable of possessing them, but there are only 24 hours in a day. If you spend the majority of your time cultivating your talent, then you may miss out on opportunities in other areas that may abound in the way of teaching you how to best capitalize on any given thing having to do with talent if you are not the person who's actually performing. That's what it is that you do. And there's a trade-off for that, because you don't bear a majority of the responsibility when things go belly up, because it is hard to make it. It is hard being successful in business, to be a multimillionaire, to be a multi-billionaire, and to have all of these people literally, economically, especially leaning on you for subsistence. That's a tall task, and everyone is not suited for it. Okay. Not only that, but what we do know is that there is a correlation between. Now you got to walk with me here, because this gets a bit complicated. There's a correlation between entertainment, between celebrity and poverty. What am I saying? Those who make it in sports and those who make it in music are people who come from low socioeconomic backgrounds. Even the white entertainers who make it come from poverty. Elvis Presley, poor. This particular entertainer, poor. Now, there are theories as to why this is so. A huge part of the reason why is because, or there's a theory as to why this may be true, is that cultivating the necessary talent in order to make it within music and sport is something that one does not necessarily have to rely on a community. They don't have to necessarily rely on the community in order to properly cultivate. Those talents are something that can be pursued individually. And we know what is also a factor. When talking about poverty, of course, is the breakdown in community and the breakdown in family and everything else. And so sometimes the emphasis is placed on things that an individual can use that does not require the kind of social and familial framework that they may otherwise need if they decided to learn how to become the world's next great astrophysicist or something like that. You don't need the kind of infrastructure and you can learn it on your own, but you can imagine that it would be a lot harder. Again, this is just the theory. But what we do know is a lot of famous, from the Michael Jacksons of the world growing up, and the crime-ridden streets of Gary, Indiana. I mean, it just goes on and on and on. And this is regardless of race. This is white entertainers and black entertainers. It runs the gamut. Many of them come from poverty. Like I said, there's a certain there's an internal cultural dynamic there, and sometimes mean that we may not always know what it is, but we can see the patterns in society. Like, say, for example, if you notice the great Louis Armstrong, if you look at photos of Louis Armstrong, he's always wearing a Star of David. because the great Louis Armstrong, one of the greatest entertainers in American history, of course, he was famously adopted by a Jewish family. And it was his Jewish family that introduced him, because this is, from what I understand, as this is part and parcel of Jewish culture, all Jewish children are introduced to an instrument at a certain point. It was one of their many rites of passage within the Jewish community. And so he was introduced to the trumpet, and he took to it, and he became the Louis Armstrong that the world knew. And so he credits his Jewish upbringing for his attraction to jazz music, because it was introduced to him by his Jewish family, who again had a culture of instrumentation and learning how to play instruments. That's why you always saw Louis Armstrong wearing the Star of David.
I will say that, you know, as an artist myself, there is one thing to have talent, and I've seen this because I was in the music industry, and you see the people who, you know, there are people that I was around back in the day that are famous today, that or they are well known, might not be famous to the public, but famous to musicians and other artists. And one thing that I will say that is really that everybody's seen when it comes to Black musicians, in particular Black American artists, and Frank Zanu talks about this, but in a different kind of topic. He says that, and I kind of mentioned this already, Blacks don't know how to manage. They don't understand that you can have the talent, okay, but you don't manage well. So you need somebody you need a manager to help you with your talent. And so you don't end up with bad record deals, or you know, you're a great singer, but you're performing at a hole in the wall. You know, that these are people, your manager, your attorney, you have to have a team. And one thing that Black Americans, there's a few things. They don't understand that concept in other types of industries. The team effort, that everybody is not a CEO. And there is a skill that you need to have to be the CEO. Okay, you got this great idea, but if you don't have your people in place to help the idea forward, it's not going to go. And you can't hate the people that you need to act, that are good. You can't hate them, but then want them to, work on your business. But it's got to be all Black. Okay, we'll fail.
Yeah.
Because everybody Black may not have the skill that you need. And if you go in that myopic and simple-minded, you're never going to succeed. That's the problem. That's part of the problem. And I want to play this clip because they're talking about this. Let's see.
And 15th Amendment, all of those things that started as the Black liberation movement, but then got shoehorned into civil rights because everybody wants to come off of our pain. It's still a part of who we are. American culture is Black culture. The problem is, not only did we have to create it, but everybody else got to monetize it. We don't own major forms of media. So the message that goes out to the world about foundational Black Americans is very lopsided. It's very negative. Even Frank said to Nancy, said, well, what is your culture? Twerking? Negating the fact that twerking started in Africa.
Well, that's
those things of that nature. The hip, stop me when I go wrong. All of these things get put out as if that's who we are. And it's a very limited, very narrow-minded, very sore and very disingenuous snapshot.
Wait, I was trying to get to the management part.
You see how he played this game? Because he knows that this rhetoric, this narrative that we are victims because of white cultural supremacy, these ideas that we've adopted due to our status as as this oppressed group. He's double talking, because he's saying that, well, we are more than No. What do you mean? Because we're not responsible for putting out those negative images. But then he goes on to say, because he knows that that's a sore spot that'll get people to perk up because they feel like victims, because Black folks, our culture was taken away from us. We weren't even allowed to speak our language after all, don't you know? And so he wants to have it both ways. He wants to remind you that the twerking images are not put out by us, but at the same time, so in other words, that's not really us. But you do know twerking came from Africa, right? You see how you want to have it both ways. So is it us or isn't it us? Is it positive or is it negative? If it comes from Africa, does that make it good? I'm sorry, Keisha, you muted.
Everybody that we saw twerking in the beginning was Black people. Okay, so
See,
what are you talking about? That wasn't us. It was you. Like, I seen the picture. We seen Freaknik. Okay, it was you. Like, what are you talking about?
Right. The images get put out about foundational Black Africans. That's not us. But anyway, but not to mention that twerking came from Africa. See, he just downloaded all these talking points on you, and you don't even have time to think about what he's saying because he's just like, bro. But you don't even realize you contradicted yourself from one sentence to the next. It's either is twerking a part of Black identity? Is it a part of Black culture or isn't it? If it's not, then why are you mentioning the fact that it came from Africa? I don't even know if that's true, but why are you mentioning this?
Right. Here we go.
Of who we are, because we get put into killers, baby mamas, this and that and the other. And then when you look at how the media is weaponized, right? They'll take people throughout the diaspora and then put them on platforms and then bring them here. I'll give you an example. There's a show on CBS called Bob Hart's Abishola. And she said things that were much more incendiary than what Frank said. Oh, what is it? Gangbangers and baby mamas?
Crazy.
No. That energy is designed to keep us a certain way. And then when you talk about how the entertainment is weaponized, because that's the message, that's our largest export. It always has been. Our talent and our ability to entertain, but not capitalize on said entertainment. You can't point to one major Black-owned record company. You can't point to one major Black-owned media outlet. You can't point to one major media or technological distribution center that is controlled, owned, and managed by foundational Black Americans. And so the message of foundational Black Americans that gets out is not our message. And I completely reject that. If that's what you think the culture is, I am here to tell you that ain't my culture. It ain't never been my culture. It ain't been the culture of most of my brethren. Do we have some knuckleheads? Absolutely. Of course we do. But do we also have things like COINTELPRO we've still had to overcome? Do we have things like the 94 Biden-Clinton crime bill that we've had to overcome? And throughout history, I have yet to see anybody from any of those 54 countries come back for their brothers that they say that they love so much. I don't remember the warships coming to get us. I don't. But what I do see is, we're really good at educating. We take the opportunities and we're able to, go and take these American opportunities that you guys squander. Yeah, because you get an immigrant experience. You do not get the foundational Black American experience. You get the same immigrant talk that the Russians get, and the Russians got a lot of nerve because if it wasn't for Alexander Pushkin, they'd still be speaking French. Alexander Pushkin created the Russian language. He was a Black man. So when you talk about where we are and where we've been, you also have to talk about the mind screw, out of respect for your channel, that we have been put under. So no, we don't have an official language because we weren't allowed to have one. But still, if you look at AAVE, it's everywhere. And when it comes out of our mouth, it goes from the hood to the boardrooms to a billboard on Broadway or in Times Square. So we have culture, we have influence. And no, I'm not just talking about taking what's the word I'm looking for? Weeds and turning them into collard greens, or taking innards and turning them into chitterlings. I'm talking about the fact that we have persevered and we are the most copied individuals on the planet. So much so, if I'm wrong, please explain Akon to me. Please explain Burna Boy to me. They all do a variation of who we are. And I'm not just talking about music. I'm talking about the walk. I'm talking about the talk. I'm talking about the hairstyles. I'm talking about the innovation. Everything we do. We took a construction worker's boot and made it the hottest item for the past 40 years. Because everybody finds a way to profit off of what we create and then demonize us for creating it and then label us criminals, uneducated, unwilling. We don't care, but they don't talk about all the systemic things that have been set up and profited by people who want to keep us in a certain box. That doesn't mean we can't escape that box, but to act like we were not put under duress for what we had to put together as a culture when everybody else got to inherit it. and that includes Haitians, Jamaicans, everybody else got to be left alone so that they can develop. We didn't have that. And to this day, I have yet to meet one African, one Jamaican, one Caribbean, one Black person anywhere who comes into this country and has automatically ingrained in them before they start going, my country, 'tis of thee, sweet land of liberty, of thee I sing, that they're afraid when the red and blue lights come on behind them when they're pulled over. And I get it, and I'm the son, brother, and nephew of cops. That's why I say, yes, we have a culture, but of course we don't have a language. But let's not be disingenuous and act like it doesn't matter, because it does. Because as foundational Black American goes, so goes everybody else in society.
So, Frank, let me ask you a question. If slavery erased our Black Americans' culture, what do you call what we built after slavery? What do you call that?
Well, you have to give me an example of what you mean by what we build. What are you referring to?
You tied culture back to African and something that you inherit, but you said that got erased during slavery, but we built something. Clearly, Black Americans have built throughout slavery and the culture that we have currently.
What I'm asking.
Okay, sorry, I had the wrong. Sorry, y'all. This is not him. This is not that crazy. Not him though. But go ahead, Chuck. Go ahead and respond while I cue this.
I said all this talk, this we talk. I mean, for goodness sake, hey man, I get it. I know the French helped to subsidize the colonists during the Revolutionary War, and we came out of the Revolutionary War when we were forming the country. I know we owed a huge financial debt to the French. So I don't know, maybe that's his Francophile, sensibilities coming through, all this we talk. I don't know. I don't understand this. What makes him think that what belongs to another individual or to another group is somehow like it abounds to my own personal glory and success?
Because you're Black like them. That's why they think that.
Exactly. I know the answer to that question, but that individual's talent is all their own, okay? Ryan Taylor's stupidity is his own. That has nothing to do with me. Akon's talent is his own. That has nothing to do with me. I've never met the man. I don't know anything about the man. But what say you when he's talking about, well, what has this individual's talent done for us as a people when everybody else is profiting off of the things that, because last time I checked, a lot of these famous individuals, I mean, they ain't living nowhere like I'm living. And I bet you if I asked them to give me something in exchange for nothing, how many of them gonna do it? Not many.
He wouldn't even do it.
Exactly, because I don't know what he got in his bank account, but he's so worried about everybody else. Stop counting everybody else's pockets, bro. You supposed to learn that on the street since you so Black. That's Black code 101, bro. Stop counting my money, okay? And then why you keep talking about, well, what has such and such gained from this, that, and the third? What say you, sir, when it comes to the value that the consumer gains from the production of the things, the talents, and the gifts that these people bring to the world? Why is it that I need to profit off of someone else's talent when my reward is seeing the talent in action? Because even if it has no direct correlation to my own talent and abilities, I can draw inspiration from the greatness of, let's say, Michael Jordan just had a gift. Mm-hmm. God just touched him. Whitney Houston, God just touched her. Mm-hmm. For whatever reason. But it is in that I can look at that and be inspired and set new horizons and create new aspirations for myself, because Michael Jordan stretched the limits of what a human being can do on the basketball court. He stretched the limits and showed me a new expectation on what a human being can do. Mm. It didn't have to pay. It doesn't have to, right? Or Michael Jackson, or anybody, or because we're talking about entertainers, right? It doesn't have to be something that the collective benefits from, because we're not the ones that are putting up the billboards and all this bull crap he's talking about. But the value from the consumer's point of view is being able to experience it. That's why when I go to the movies to watch a film, I am willing to exchange my hard-earned money to watch that movie, because, to go back to something I said at the top of the conversation, at that moment, watching that movie was more important than the money that I had in my pocket. So I gained something of greater value by being able to experience that thing. And so we are enriched as a society by watching the talent of another individual who made the requisite sacrifices needed in order to be great at their craft. And that's a huge part of the reason why, if I didn't make the point clear earlier, why they may not be as good in business and in other things, because it takes a great deal of luck and opportunity, but also a great deal of practice in honing your skill and your craft, because only a small, minute slither of a percent of a person is going to go on to make a living being an entertainer and being mega famous. It just doesn't happen to people like that. And so they don't have time. Keisha, I don't have time to sit down and study the ins and outs of contractual law and media and business law and these things, while at the same time working on my scales. Do, re, mi, fa, sol, la, ti, do. Then I'm going back to the law books and I'm reading on how to negotiate thick ass contracts. I don't have time for that.
You couldn't, even if you wanted to. Like, that's why when you're in business, they say get good at one thing, because even when you're trying to do multiple things, you're gonna suck at all of them, because you just don't have that. You ain't God. You're not Jesus. You don't have that kind of bandwidth. Okay, you're not made like that. Oh my gosh, it's not. Let me play this part. I wanted. This is what I was trying to get to. I hope this is right.
We can Google it.
Sure,
but that's that's the part.
I'm no expert.
No.
On all the things he has listed.
I'm just saying we shouldn't just talk about leaving.
I will respond.
We built that.
Yes, I will respond to you. I'm no expert on all the things he has listed. I might have read about them, but you see, every time I read something or I encounter a story, my mind works in that way because I'm an critical thinker. All right. I have also known societies in the world that once upon a time were prevented to do anything. They were prevented to do anything. Like the Jews is an example of it. Indians were an example for 81 years by the British. They couldn't build, innovate, do anything. They have to rely on the white people, right? And you can go down Korea the same way. However, I believe in something called the second advantage, meaning when the phenomena is over, you should repeat it. So somebody gave me the first lecture about Tulsa, Oklahoma. And I said, what year was that? What a long time ago, right? Okay. At one time in this country, you and we will not have an opportunity to do certain things. But if that ability to build Black Wall Street is innate, why haven't we repeated it?
Because we cannot. And here's
now let's go to your flea experiment.
Sure.
How about the other people who've been held down also by the same condition for long? Why are they not? Here is my problem. I have a lot of mentees. African-American students whom I used to take to Africa. I had a program. Every year, I take a bunch of them to build schools in Benin.
A lot of that money out of his own pocket, by the way.
Yes.
Credit where credit is due.
Now, I really get the goose on my skin when we keep repeating the very thing that is building prisons around us. One is that we've been psyched up, so we can't do anything. Two is somebody is always lurching in the dark. That's why we are the way we are. If you say so, and then you ask a kid to go to school and stay in school and do well, you sound stupid. Why don't you go and kill the white supremacist so the problem will go away from me? There is something that is just human. When you find yourself in a certain situation, you cannot explain it, better create a boogeyman fast. But a boogeyman only turns around and imprisons you and your own children.
Do you hear that? Before he continues, the boogeyman that you create, it only imprisons you and your children. That's why I'm so big on whom the Son sets free is free indeed. Because when you say, I am a Bible-believing Christian, I believe this word of God Almighty, all of that I'm blaming this one. It go out the window because you got you're connected now to the source of everything. What do I look like walking around here saying I have the words of life in my hands and God has left it for me? And if I follow this, I can have a good life here or have a decent life here at least. And I know I have everlasting life. Now, having a good life here is not promised, but I do know that I will have a good life after this short time here is done. And you mean to tell me that I got to walk around here and at the same time I'm supposed to believe that some nameless, faceless, abstract person is out to get me when I'm saying that I have the book of life everlasting? It's just nonsense. Now, this guy is not a Christian, as far as I can tell, but he is recognizing something in your thinking is not right. And you got to at least start there, but you won't get there unless you kick the tires on your own thoughts. Let me let him finish.
I refuse. There is no psychological effect on any Black person on earth. We are just what we are, different. And whenever we find ourselves among other people, the first thing we start doing is compare. Let me give you a country, South Africa. 12 tribes, 7 major ones. Shaka the Zulu is from the Zulu land. And then the Xhosas, and then the Vendas, and Limpopos, okay? Makes one huge region, 51 million Black people. Six-pack and big chest. They'll kill you with their bare hands. 2.8 million white people arrived and built that country to the standard of a European country. 2.8 million South African white. Then the people started bickering. They said apartheid was the reason the Black man was poor in South Africa.
Nope.
So the majority, 51 million Black people, were waiting on 2.8, saying that apartheid. You don't know what apartheid is?
Yes.
Apartheid was no economic thing. Apartheid simply is what is happening or happened in America, like in Westport. Look, don't have children with our girls. We want to keep a pure race. Apartheid is what is happening in India. We want to keep Indians marry themselves. Koreans are eugenics. They marry each other. How many Koreans have you seen in America married to celebrities? No. That is apartheid. So if you start marrying them, they'll tell them, clean out. That was it. Now, if Blacks believe that they can build South Africa, you know what? Mandela wouldn't waste his time in prison and all these things. He would have simply said, you know what? Let's have a BSA, Black South Africa Republic. Let them cut off white South Africa and let's compete. No, they wasted their time asking the whites, just allow me to come to your beach, to your clinic, to your schools. Okay, then in 2 years.
What does it is if that don't sound like Martin Luther King, where we wanted to sitting in the lunch counter and eat a hamburger and drink some coffee? If that don't sound just like the same bull crap over here, let me.
Ago, the white man said, just wait and see. We are warning them that managing a country is not something anybody you can just do. So 32 years ago, they gave the country back to the Blacks. I was there in 2022 to speak. They are now having load shed. Electricity can't stay on. Water is not flowing. Roads are cracked. Airport is breaking down. The Durban train station is finished when they gave it to Blacks.
So you're saying that they're not capable?
No, they're not capable. I don't have to say it. 32 years. It took Singapore, Hong Kong, South Korea, Malaysia, and Indonesia to build themselves up right after independence. 14 countries in.
Wow.
Quick.
Oh, quick.
Yep.
Oh,
yeah. No. Yeah, I said quick. He mentioned. I think he mentioned Singapore and some other countries. You look at how quickly Japan was able to pick itself up after the Second World War and so on. And say this is not foreign aid or any such nonsense. This is about human capital and know-how. You get what you get. And like I said a million times, because of the rise in the popularity of the Marxist doctrine by the midpoint of the 20th century, and you have to bear in mind that we're talking about in various independence movements that were taking place within the context of the Cold War. And so it was a very different time. Of course, Nelson Mandela was a communist himself. I'm not going to go into the details of Nelson Mandela, but he was a self-admitted terrorist who confessed to killing his fellow South Africans who were opposed to the growing communist regime in South Africa.
And
In
his
his
wife
own
too.
words, yeah, in his own words, right? And his wife, he confessed in open court. And like Frank Zanu said, you know what I mean? He said, no, I don't have to say it. You can look around and you can see it.
I can see it.
And there's nothing that says that Africans are genetically incapable. They just don't want to do the work. They don't want to do the thing that they need to do, and realize that there's a place for all peoples, for all individuals within the global scheme. But you have to approach life in general with humility and appreciation for the very gift of life in and of itself. But that's not what they did. Again, they chose resentment, and the country was put back into the hands of people who did not know what they were doing, and they simply went back to the old mores and conventions of pre-European South African society. That when you put that in a modern political a context, you have tribal warfare playing itself out in the 20th and 21st century in a more sophisticated manner. And again, this is the type of stuff that was going on prior to their contact to any significant degree with Europeans, and they just simply reintroduced those centuries old tribal rivalries, right?
Exactly.
And they just played them out in a modern day political context. And there's so much corruption and cronyism and nepotism in Africa as the entire continent. And for the people who actually know how to build, foreigners, it's a struggle, because the people who actually can help the Africans won't invest in any way, not just financially, in any way, because they will do so at a great loss, because their property rights will not be respected, because they will be stolen from.
Yeah. They went right back to their old value system when they
And
left.
mind you, these rulers are worth millions. Back in the day, real quick before you go back to Frank Zano, remember in the 80s, we had the Live Aid. Remember the Live Aid concert? Well, we were
Oh
young
yeah.
kids. The Live Aid, and what would you have? The whole thing. We are the world.
Oh yeah.
That whole thing was about bringing awareness to the plight of Africa,
Of
particularly in
Africans. Yes.
Africa. Then they had hands across America and all this other
Mhm.
foolishness. And it's funny because our elites, particularly in Hollywood, were putting on these elaborate showcases to try to raise awareness and to bring aid to the people, but the peoples were suffering in large part thanks to their meddling in the political process by undermining and corroding the morale of Americans. And what I mean is eroding their resolve to support those in positions of authority who had as at the top of their agenda the aim and the goal of pushing back and fighting against the growing international influence of the Soviet Union. In particular, the Live Aid concert was meant to bring awareness to the civil war that was going on in Ethiopia at the time. Ethiopia, Somalia, and Eritrea. There's a whole lot going on, but there was one particular individual at the time who reigned over Ethiopia. I can't exactly remember how long he was in office, but he was Ethiopia's first ruler after the fall of the monarchy. His name was Mengistu. I don't know if you ever heard the name Mengistu. Mengistu Haile Mariam. If you just look him up, Googling Mengistu, he was something else. He was a Marxist. He was a communist. He was one of the Soviet Union's main stooges. And what you had with Mengistu, who was a communist. You had other communist factions in Ethiopia and in Somalia, and they were all these different communist factions were warring with each other over control of Eastern Africa, again, particularly Ethiopia during the reign of Mengistu. But this is what that whole philanthropic charitable thing that was happening in the 80s was all about, bringing awareness to the destruction that was being caused by these communist regimes in Africa. But again, the story isn't told in that way. The Netflix documentary about the We Are the World, the greatest night in pop culture, didn't tell you that, you know, the Jane Fondas of the world who butchered and sabotaged our war effort in Southeast Asia to stop the spread of communism in that part of the world. They're not telling you about that, but they can go and sing and dance, but they're not telling you about what was really going on in Africa. It was about the rise of communism. And they helped to do it.
Many people in this country who are below the age of 40 don't understand what Soviet Union means. That was a devil's empire that colonized 14 countries in their grip for 40 years. Name one Eastern European country that is downtrodden because of the Russians.
So do you have the answer to the reason they're not capable?
There is no reason.
So they're just not capable because they're just not capable. There's no reason behind it. There's nothing behind it. There's not a particular mindset.
I'll tell you, because if you look in the generation of where I come from, my grandfather, great-grandfather, great-great-great-grandfather, none from Africa has ever build and manage a country.
It got to be a reason, though.
No. I'm saying we have never done it. Just
right.
like no lion has ever dug a foxhole. Right. Only fox can dig a foxhole.
Right.
He doesn't.
Only rabbits can dig a rabbit hole.
So
lions can't. So why would you say, is there a reason the lion can dig a foxhole? No, there's no reason. It's a lion.
But those different animals, we talking about humans.
Lack of breadth of experience.
Humans are
that is a reason.
My friend.
Not having the experience is a reason. And again,
okay, so maybe we have not had the need. You see, we make too big a deal about industrialization, as if industrialization is for people who are smart. No, industrialization is for people who were threatened by nature. And the continent of Africa, which is the home place of Black people, is the most comfortable place that has never had any threat. Tsunamis, earthquakes, tectonic plate shakes, winters 10 feet high, springs. You wake up every day, the trees are green, the tomato is 365 days, it's right behind your house, the river is there, and you just lie out there, eat something, and just chill. So your brain for millions of years is not inventive. Because
there's no need.
There's no need. So we build little communities. Africans are communal. The Black man by nature is not an individualistic actor. No. The Black man relies. That's why you can't finish a sentence with a Black man without him saying, oh, my niece, my cousin. You can talk to a Japanese, a Korean, and a white man for 3 hours, and he's my wife and children. That's all you're going to hear because they come from that kind of thing. All right? So where we come from, where we evolved, gave us something. And that something is what we are. So what the white person did in South Africa is not because he's smart. It's because just over years, millions of years, they've been in threat from nature. So always their brain is inventive. Oh, how can we protect ourselves? We didn't need a reason to let the water be in some, because it's not going to freeze. And we have to come back to that. But we keep preaching that this weakly white small race have held down Black men, Shaquille O'Neal size of people. And then our children are hearing it. And you forget to see why our children hate each other because you say we are nothing. So it's easy for the Black man to kill the other person. And I'm just saying we need to stop this. Stop it. How can one race on earth have the same experience and it's not going away?
I agree with you, right? To a certain degree,
so to your question, we build it so we won't live it. You're lying to yourself. What did you build in America? Name one thing you built. You were in 6 states in the South, farms because of your ability. They took them to Jamaica because of plantation. They took them to Haiti because of plantation. So when they brought you here, it's because farms. And you keep saying we build. You're making the kids angry. If the man didn't have a home, how could he bring you as a slave?
Come on,
he built the country. He wanted you here to maintain some things, man. So what? You build. So what? You will give your dignity, your children's dignity, because we build the country. Therefore, we are going to stay in the country where we will be looked down upon. We will be indignified because I build it. Instead of you going and build. You know what the Jews build in other people's country, but they left it easily to go to a desert. And look at it today. Touch one of them, and God bless you.
A desert that was started and state sanctioned in 1946, the year my mother was born. A desert that also came with infrastructure, a desert that also came with banking systems, a desert that also came with absolutely no laws preventing them to build freely.
But
that
I'm
is no,
saying
no, 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 no. Wait, no, no.
Hold on, Frank.
I sat here very quietly,
Okay,
listening.
sorry.
He ain't said a word when you was talking. Let you rattle off all that garbage. Oh, my bad, Keisha, you muted.
I'm sorry. It is such a great conversation. You're gonna have to go and watch it because it's 11 o'clock now. But it's long. It's good. It's really, really good. It's so many nuggets in there.
And it's only one.
Go ahead.
It's only one person. It's only one person dropping them. Like I said, and it's Frank, and it's not even close. You know. Again, and here they are trying. I mean, just because he is a Native African from Benin, doesn't necessarily mean that he knows more about the history of Africa than someone not born on the continent. Let me just say that. But at the same time, I just the arrogance and the conceit of these people, particularly, well, I mean the young folk off sitting adjacent, they've been, they've managed to conduct themselves in the clips that I've seen. They've managed to conduct themselves quite well. But at the same time, it's just amazing to me, and like when he says that, well, they just haven't. Or he said they haven't had them. They just don't. They just can't. Well, why can't they? Why can't they? Why can't they? They're looking for a reason, because human beings are largely narrative based, and they're driven. And I really do think it kind of speaks to that. I want to say this correctly, sort of like that imprint, that God consciousness that you have on you, where there always has to be I don't know. I mean, I'm thinking of a lot of things right now. A lot of things running through my mind. I'm trying to flesh my thoughts out in real time. But it just always amazes me how human beings who, when you can look at something as matter of fact, and at the same time still want to find a perpetrator, you still want to find a villain, as if someone, and this is what their questions were leading to, and they thought that by him not having an answer was his silence, or his inability to give them an answer, was louder and spoke more profoundly than any answer he could possibly give, because in their minds he is trying to evade the obvious, which is they have been able to do these things because some external force throughout history has been preventing them from doing so. And he's just simply saying, no, that's not the case. Because, like I've said before, everything doesn't have to be a melodrama, and human capital largely develops in a vacuum, because for the longest time, individuals were born where they died, and movement about the face of the earth came at a high cost.
That's right.
And so
unknowns, like you wouldn't know like where you're like what you're walking into. It's not like you had all this information.
Right. You don't even know, like, if you go however many miles in one direction, what you're bound to encounter. Like I say, you just don't know. And so the peoples of that particular region of the world, because he was talking a lot about South Africa, these people were left isolated for a very, very long time. And isolation breeds cultural stagnation, and cultural stagnation breeds a stagnation in the development of human capital, which leads to economic lag when there's no communication with people outside of your immediate group. And the peoples of Africa are very, very segregated. It's split apart, and they impose upon themselves. The only time, again, when you begin to see any type of serious economic growth is when Europeans came in through imperial imposition and imposed, not always by force. It wasn't that simple. A lot more complicated than that, but that's another story because we're about to wrap up, Keisha.
Yeah, I do want to bring. I got somebody back here, Khalil, who wants to. He looks
Hey, what's up, everybody? How you guys doing?
good.
Yeah.
Oh, you guys know each other. That's your
Yeah,
friend.
that's my boy. That's my boy, man. He
Okay,
came.
all right.
Yeah.
He drove from
Hello,
Canada.
welcome.
He drove from Canada to come see me, man. We actually kicked it at a bar one time.
Oh, nice.
Yeah.
Hey, Khalil, before you,
Yeah.
hey, Khalil, before you jump in, Keisha, I just wanted to say, like what Frank Zanu said, and one of the factors that he said that battle-hardened Europeans, because I talked about the presence of iron, coal, and ore in Europe that they didn't have in Africa. But another one of the things that battle-hardened Europeans, of course, Keisha, is what? The centuries-old ongoing war at various stages with the Islamic Empire, with the Ummah. I just had to mention it, but go ahead.
Yep. Yeah. I'm very glad that you guys are going over this because yeah, I had sent this to Chad some time ago because I had watched this and was riveted by it just like you guys were, and I was like, oh, this is dope. So I came up with a concept of a film, a documentary film that I'm gonna work on, and I asked Chuck so kindly to be in it, and he agreed.
Nice.
And I also
Breaking news, everyone! Breaking news.
yeah. So as soon as I watched it, I reached out to Frank and I reached out to Dave Anderson, and they both got back to me, and they also agreed to be in it. And I was also blessed enough to get Chad to also contribute and Blanchard. So
Nice. Very nice.
yes, and now I'm gonna put you on the spot, Keisha. Would you be so kind to give me a bit of your time and also contribute because again, this is a conversation that needs to be had. So the title of my documentary is what does Black Unity look like? Because the brothers from the Daily Wrap Up crew, they were trying to, they were asking Frank as a foundation of Black Americans, well, why can't we work together? And and I think you should do a part 2 to this or a part 3 because it's worth um, going through the whole thing and opening up that discussion. But after watching it, I for myself, I'm like, yeah, like Frank said, I don't know the answer, right? And I said, you know what, that's something worth exploring. So that's what caused me to come up with the title of the film and say, yeah, this is a thought experiment. Let's try and walk it up on its feet and see where it goes because I'm in Canada, right? I'm in Canada, and obviously Frank is
everyone in case you didn't
yeah
know.
yeah. So in Canada, we have a Black population here, but again, it's all people from Africa, from the Caribbean. So we have I guess our own kind of distinct culture ourselves. So in bringing everybody together and having this discussion, I wanted to know, yeah, like just breaking things down. Like we all have different definition in terms of what Black even means. So that's going to be the beginnings of it and the walk of it. And I'm excited to see where it goes because I don't, in coming up with these questions and speaking to all these people, I don't know where it's going to go. The film is going to take shape once we get to the editing room and seeing where it goes. But we have a parade. We have a parade at the beginning of August. It's called the Caravana Parade, and it's basically a West Indian cultural parade where they have a bunch of floats and people are kind of dancing around, and everybody's representing their nation from the Caribbean.
Yeah.
And yeah, it's a good time for me to. That's where I'm going to kind of hit the streets and just speak to, because we have people from the U.S. coming over, and just speak to people and ask them what their definition of, what's the definition of Black? What does it mean? What does Black unity mean to you? What do you, obviously just asking them where they're from, and getting their take on it. Because if there is to be Black unity, quote unquote, then I would think there has to be some agreement on many things.
Mhm.
And what I want to explore with this film is, if we do agree on a lot of things, if you don't agree on a lot of things, it
I
can
can tell you
there
right
be it?
now, I do
Yeah.
not agree. I don't want to come together. I'm not trying to unify with
Yeah.
certain types of people. I do not
Exactly.
date with certain types of people because I
Yeah.
have values. Like
Exactly.
my life. I value
Exactly.
my life.
Exactly.
Well, like
Yeah.
I got
But yes, darling, you call me for the camera.
Okay.
Girl over
Great.
there.
Great. Amazing.
It was
I'm so happy, so
fun,
pleased.
darling.
Thank you. Chad, you can give me your contact info, right? You can give me pass your information along, and and we'll talk. But I just wanted to say I'm so glad that you did this, and I think you should continue. You might have to do another 2 or 3 shows about it, but again, it's worth opening up and worth exploring.
For sure, for sure. It was a great conversation. I'm like obsessed with. You should see my YouTube history now. It's all like Frank Zanu's
Oh
stuff.
yeah. Same. Soon as he was saying the things, I was like, yeah, this is it. And we had a great conversation. The man is, he's a great guy. Great guy.
That's so funny because I was actually thinking about contacting him myself because I have so many
Absolutely,
more
reach out to him.
questions.
Reach out to him because he wants to. Again, his project Rethink. He wants to have these discussions and he wants to open it up. So yeah, absolutely. Again, when we conversate, I'll pass along his information and reach out to him because he wants to have these type of conversations because he wants and for myself and I know for you and for Chuck, we have to have these conversations because our children cannot go on thinking a lot of the things that are out there. We can't have our children thinking these things. We have to retrain them and it's of the utmost importance for me. That's why I'm taking the time to do this because just like you guys are taking the time because if we don't correct and try to shift the culture even in our small way, our kids are gonna be left to repeat the same things, repeat the same, repeat the same stuff
Not
that we
on
grew up
our
thinking.
watch. Okay,
Yeah.
like enough. I have had it. Like you did.
Yeah.
Like, enough. So, but yes, I would love to. Thanks so much for coming up. And yeah, we're definitely gonna keep talking about this because we didn't even really get into like our forgiveness piece. We didn't even really get into the solution part. We kind of just went over the problems,
Yeah.
So yes, this definitely deserves another conversation.
Oh, absolutely. Because forgive what Chad was saying about forgiveness and it was really Chuck. Sorry, Chuck. What Chuck was saying. CH. I'm sorry.
Khalil always because me and Khalil talk and we mentioned Chad during our conversation. So Khalil
I've done it. I do it myself. So
he calls me Chad a lot. So I'm doing that. It's all good.
But what you were mentioning about forgiveness and it's so funny that you had mentioned that and same thing with Frank. He had said we are not going to be able to move on from this. We're not going to be able to escape the boogeyman if we can't let that stuff go. You know what I mean? Like every other nation and nationality has had their time of being at the bottom of the totem pole. And like Frank said, history's shown that they've picked themselves up. And it's like,
Thanks,
that's
Leo. But Chuck, please give him my number. But I'm gonna go ahead and drop you down. But be in touch. Come back and see
I will.
All right.
I will. Take care, guys.
Bye.
I had earlier today before we started the live when I saw the thumbnail. No matter because when you had told me Did you tell me? I think you told me beforehand that we were going to go over a Frank Zanu conversation. I think you told me
Yeah.
beforehand, but I know once I saw the thumbnail, I was like, I'm going to send this to Khalil because I knew that
Oh,
he was
okay, okay,
really into
cool.
Frank, and I knew that he was working on a film project that Frank has agreed to be in. I told him I would do it, so I figured Khalil could get something out of the. I mean, just figured he would enjoy the conversation.
Yeah.
So I'm
Well,
glad
thanks
he.
for doing
I'm
that. I
glad he came
appreciate
up.
it.
But yeah,
Yeah.
but Keisha, just to wrap it up, that's why just to kind of touch on forgiveness and how it relates to a lot of what Frank and Mr. Anderson were discussing is that this whole notion of a black identity was forged in fraud. It's fraudulent.
Fraudulent.
It's make believe, and what you have at the head of this thing are a small select group of social engineers who took up the standard, the cause of being the supposed spokespersons for the global black collective, because of course they were the ones with the requisite know-how needed to lead and to guide the black collective into a better tomorrow, which to them begins, and that tomorrow begins once they have successfully defeated their opposition. And so there is no forgiveness so long as you cling to this identity, because this identity was a creation that was based upon a fraudulent notion that we as black folks are victims of this global process of colonialism that has worked for the benefit of the white race at the expense of everyone else. And so seeing as how their success was forged in this way, we must do as they have done, which is engage them in this zero sum game, and it is insofar that we can properly unify, whatever in the world that means, we will successfully defeat them in this conflict. And once we have defeated them, we will then take up our proper place as rulers of the planet. But unlike the white man, we will rule in a benevolent fashion because we, of course, are more inherently moral than he is. And there are all sorts of ideologies and theologies even that seek to explain this bogus idea. And so that therein lies the problem with
Yeah,
the
I'm
whole
gonna need them to go and look at these 54 African countries and then and the Black Americans and make that make sense. How you're gonna all of a sudden
it's
turn
not
into
organic.
these benevolent, good country managers. Get the freak
Mhm.
out.
You
We'll
you
have
take
part
you
two.
take you take you take these ideas, and like I said, it is to the extent that because the so-called minority, he is the benchmark. And you see, because the point of society is not the vehicle toward the end. All right, I remember saying this way a long time ago when you and I were on the live with you and Chaz. Want to cut into the culture, and I said that society is not a means to an end. Society is the end. That's the point. This here is the point. This is not meant, all of this is not meant to facilitate our traverse into something greater than this. It's hard enough just to simply maintain and sustain this. This is the point of the entire process, is
Yeah.
this. Everything else is simply fool's gold. But when you, from the outside looking in, can impose your vision to say that freedom is proof that the promise of liberalism works, you've lost the plot. You've completely lost the plot, because liberty, freedom is the tool by which you need that tool in order to establish a world where you can mitigate,
And
right?
yes,
Mitigate
but
and
they don't even
mitigate.
want that. That's how you know that they don't. That's the evidence that they can't that they've never created anything and that they will never create anything, because you have to have the liberty, which they don't want. They want one main government that controls everything. So they don't want real freedom, and then they don't want the ability to have fair trade. So you don't really want to be here. You don't really want the American thing. So go back to the places that's doing what you already want.
No,
Which
because
is where you'll be happy. You won't really, because you're my anyway. That's another thing.
that's why they backwards and suffer because of some boogeyman, like Frank said. And in order to reach that stage of liberation, you have to literally, in some cases, see what has happened in South Africa over the past several years. And and figuratively, talk about whiteness, right? That's what the term they throw around to dehumanize the individual, right? You have to defeat that thing because these people literally think that they are in war. They are in a war, in a conflict with the white race in this zero sum game, and that's just not the way the world works. That's not it at all.
Yeah. Very well said. Thank you guys so much. I really enjoyed this conversation. I hope you guys enjoyed it too, Chuck. You was preaching. you was giving it to us, and I hopefully next week you'll have time. He had some extra time tonight, guys, so that's why we were blessed to get him so long. But hopefully next week you have some more time so we can dive into the solutions of these things, because we've outlined a lot of the problems.
Yeah,
And then hopefully we can get into the forgiveness piece, because I really believe that is a huge part of what is not happening amongst Black Americans in particular. So thank you, everybody. Megan, Karen, Paul, everybody, the whole gang of you. I love you. We watch Alethea, DT, Black Guy Nile. I know you. I think he's going to bed. A new co-host, Jude, Jude. CAR. We haven't seen you in so long. So glad you're here. Beige Lives Matters. Copes. hello, Glenman, and all of you. I just love you for watching. Thank you. Even the haters, even the haters, I appreciate you. DT, thank you for the $3 super sticker. And Alethea846, thank you for the $5 super chat. She says, thank you, Keisha and Chuck, for this excellent discussion tonight. God bless you. God bless you too. Thank you all for being here. I love y'all. I really do. All right, you guys, we will see you on Monday. But I do so I just put out the clip of Chuck talking about the forgiveness piece that he talks about on Wednesday. So make sure you go hit the like button, hype this video too when it's done. Thank you guys. We'll see you later.
Hey Keisha, real quick.
Oh yes.
I just put I think I did it right. So I just put a link in the
now
chat.
I can hear you.
Oh man. Let me see. Hold on.
You put a link in the chat?
Can you hear me, Keisha?
I can hear you, but it's slow. But go ahead.
Slow? Okay. Yeah, I just put a link in the chat. I'm supposed to be on a show. I believe Sunday night, this upcoming Sunday at 8:30. I'm going to be on a YouTuber. His name is Sub-Zero. He wants me to come on and he wants to interview me. Just talk about various issues confronting the so-called Black community, but more specifically, we're going to really tackle this concept of redlining, and what it actually means. And I'm going to tackle that on his YouTube channel. So if you go over there and subscribe, and
I don't see the link, so I can.
I did it on. I may be on the wrong. I may be on the other. Because you got 2 live streams going, right?
Yeah, let me see. Let me check the other one.
Yeah, I'm watching the one that's
the vertical.
Vertical, yeah.
Okay.
So Yeah, so I just wanted to just plug that show.
Okay.
It should be very interesting, and I just wanted to
Yeah.
give a shout out to Megan who keeps asking us to discuss the 45 points of comedy.
Yes, I don't even know what that is, so I would love to go over that.
We'll talk about it. It's
I
very
keep
interesting.
forgetting.
It's long. I believe she's talking about. I could be wrong, but I believe she's talking about the there was I'm not going to go into no long story, but just it was read into the congressional record in 1963 by a Democrat politician named Albert Herlong. I think that's what she's talking about, and I think he received much of his information from his contacts and sources within the FBI. I first came across the 45 points of the communist agenda when I read W. Cleon Skousen's book, The Naked Communist, which of course is a must read for anyone interested in learning about communism. Like I said, it's one of those seminal works that you have to read. And so I think that's what Megan is referring to. But if you try and go and pull it up, like I said, it was read into the congressional record in 1963 by Albert Herlong. And it breaks down how the communists said that what they were going to do in order to try and break down America. So I just wanted to just touch on it.
Yeah.
Megan's been asking us for like the last 2 weeks.
I know. I'm sorry, Megan. I don't know about it, but I've been meaning to look it up, and I just kept forgetting. So
yeah, I know
sorry
about
about
it.
that.
It's deep. It's deep when you read it. You
Yeah,
realize,
it sounds
wow,
interesting.
like almost all of these points have been accomplished.
Yeah.
When you read it. It's very interesting.
Yeah.
But yeah.
Thanks, Aaron. Thank you. All right, you guys. Check. So it's Sunday at what time?
I think 8:30. 8:30 is
Sunday, 8:30, Sub-Zero's channel. Yes. Is it Central or Eastern? Do you know?
Oh, Eastern.
Okay. So you guys, are you gonna make sure you subscribe to Chuck's channel so you know if when he puts out like a thing about it, you'll see it. So all right, you guys, we'll see you later. Bye. Have a great weekend.